You want to play rough? Okay.
Uno.
Say hello to my little friend.
As always, I'm Lindsay and we are still in Brian De Palma land. Well, we are going full De Palma. Well, I don't know, but this movie feels full De Palma. Even though I think it's not as full De Palma, is not as considered full De Palma as, say, some of his like Blowout or Body Double. But I am really looking forward to this double and this guest, because this double might be the most Carmelita Valdez McKoy double we've ever done with it, because it's a double of Scarface and of course Todd Haynes's Velvet Goldmine. So of course I only could have Carmelita Valdez McKoy, the great, the one and only, for this double. Hey, how's it going?
Oh, Lindsay, I have been counting down the days. I mean, first of all, because I love talking movies with you. And
yes.
So I'm so happy to be back.
It's been too long. So yes, good to have. I'm really happy to have you back.
And then, yes, this is, I hope like if people think of me, that they think of movies like this. Yeah. These are two of my favorite films. They're movies that mean a lot to me, that have been a part of my life for a long time, and I just can't wait to dig into them.
Yeah, I watched these back to back, and just the soundtrack alone, I was like going, oh, this is Carmelita. I'm not even going to get into the Brian De Palma incest thing that's going on. I'm not even going to get into the glorious sex that's going on in Velvet Goldmine. But I'm just like, oh my God, this soundtrack, even the disco soundtrack in Scarface. It's just like, this is Carmelita. This is her fun side and her goth side all rolled into one.
And hopefully Schlock and Awe listeners will love this too and enjoy it.
It's not just about the cocaine. There's a lot of it in both of these.
There's so much coke going on.
I was surprised there wasn't as much people as snorting cocaine in Velvet Goldmine. But then I realized, oh, these people are on something all the time. There is no...
Pretty much all the time.
All the time.
Total junkies.
Absolutely junkies, which we'll get into my love of these kinds of stories. Like I was just like going, oh, I know that story. I know where that story is from. When we get into Velvet. So they're both kind of riffing on very legendary aspects, but we're gonna I can't wait. But how have you been before we get into it?
I'm good. You know, the usual, a little podcasting here and there, which I always love and enjoy, watching a lot of movies, trying to stay. Summer is not my season. So I spend a lot of time, as much time as I can, in dark rooms. So that's
and you are in the sunshine. Is California the sunshine state, or is that another one that's called that, or is it Florida?
I think that's Florida.
Yeah, which
we got a lot. We get too much sun here.
Yeah,
too much sun.
Yeah,
too much sun for me anyway.
No, I'm back in New Zealand currently at the moment, and which has no sun. Doesn't get a lot of sun all the time. At the moment, it is very overcast, which feels very, very New Zealand at the moment.
Oh, I'm jealous. And it's funny because the Scarface, the first movie we'll talk about today, is just sun drenched.
Oh my God, it is the true sunshine, because it is in Florida and Miami specifically. So it is all sun.
It's a very summertime feeling kind of movie.
Really is, yeah. Particularly Pacino's wardrobe. We'll be getting into.
Oh, yes, we will. Absolutely.
I always actually forget to remind you about the trailers. Did you have some or?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Excellent.
I'm prepared.
I had fun with these trailers because
Me too.
Scarface is holy shit. I haven't seen this in for so long, so it was. I loved. I went back to watch it after watching a whole bunch of other De Palma because I can just go I see what he's doing here. But it is. This is a movie you can feel him rubbing his hands together with glee, which is what I loved most about it.
Yeah, it's all there.
Yeah,
like, and I get where people might say it's less De Palma, that they see less of him in this than his other films, but it is there. Oh,
it is. Yeah, it's just hidden behind a sheen of pink, which admittedly is not a color you associate with De Palma very often.
True.
But it is definitely there. So we will, we will get into it, actually. Might as well. I'll ask you what podcast you're coming on at the end, so please stay tuned for that, because Carmelita on a podcast is always something you need to listen to. But Carmelita, we're sitting in a theater. We're about to watch Scarface. What is going to be your first trailer?
So we're going to start with Ridley Scott's American Gangster.
Murder, racketeering,
family. Never forgetting where we came from.
Who is this guy?
So you are what you are in this world. That's either one or two things. Either you're somebody, or you ain't nobody.
Whose house is that, Frank?
That is your house, mama.
I want what you got, Uncle Frank. I want to be you. My investigation indicates that Frank Lucas is above the mafia.
Who does he work for? Which family?
He's not Italian, he's black.
No black man has accomplished what the American mafia hasn't in 100 years.
I did think about this one as well. It's perfect. Absolutely perfect.
You know, I'd seen bits and pieces. I hadn't really watched it in a long time. And then I watched it recently in preparation for the Shelf Shedding movie show. And it's another one of these great crime epics. And I feel like it doesn't get as much love as it should. But the reason why I wanted to play it ahead of Scarface was that you have in Denzel Washington's character as this godfather of Harlem, a very different approach lifestyle wise.
Yes.
Very like, don't be flashy. Don't rub your wealth in people's faces, stay low key. The very opposite of Tony Montana and Scarface.
Even though he's told, he still doesn't.
Yes, he can't help himself. So I thought it was a great juxtaposition, and also to have a crime epic that centers around a black man as the leader of an organization and dealing with racism is a nice juxtaposition with Tony Montana and Scarface as an immigrant.
Yes.
And so I thought those would play nicely.
No, I think they do, because I think in both, I haven't seen American Gangster in a long time, and I keep meaning to go back and watching it, but I know that movie's like nearly 3 hours. So for some reason I keep putting it on the back burner, but I remember Denzel's performance just being incredible, because he is very low key. He is not flashy.
Yeah.
He does everything. I mean, even when you look at the Henry Hills in Goodfellas, they can't help themselves. They have to show off somehow, even though they're told from the beginning, don't show off, because people are going to, once they realize who you are, they will come for you. And Tony never learns that lesson ever, which I kind of love. But no, this is from memory, this is a really great Ridley Scott movie that I don't think gets talked about a lot. So I need to actually make an effort and rewatch this movie soon.
Highly recommend it.
Yes.
It's really good.
Yeah, I remember watching it, just getting so involved in it, but I do love a big crime drama. And as we'll see with Scarface, this is a massive epic. It's so epic. Okay, for my first trailer, I am going to go black and white, but I'm going to go for the original, probably gangster story. Well, I like to think it's the original gangster story, but I'm going to go Macbeth from 1941, the Orson Welles.
Double, toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble, pouring cow's blood that has eaten her 9 pharaoh. Grease. That's sweating from the murderer's gibbet, thrown to the flame.
Finger.
A birth strangled babe. It's delivered by a drap.
Make the cruel.
Thick and slab. Like a hell broth. Boil and bubble. For a charm of powerful trouble.
It could have gone like a 1930s gangster movie because Scarface is it's a remake of Scarface from 1932. And also it is very much feels like a 30s gangster movie in a lot of ways, apart from the violence and the excess and all that kind of thing. But when you kind of watch Macbeth, which I nearly chose actually the 2021 version with Denzel, so that could have been actually kind of cool. You realize that it is all this kind of very old story of heavy that wears the crown. It is that kind of story. Once you become king, there's only one way you can go, and that is down in a very messy way. And I've been a bit on an Orson Welles kick at the moment. So, Macbeth felt like felt right to put in here.
No, I love this. I think that's a great pairing because, Scarface is so operatic.
Yes.
It's got this, there's so much theater to it that pairs beautifully with something like Macbeth.
Yes. And Al Pacino is definitely performing to the cheap seats, which I love. And I think it's on purpose that he's doing that. And it does feel very Shakespearean tragedy, even though like most actually Shakespearean tragedies, they were kind of bringing it a lot on themselves. They were doing things that would, we're going to go some Orson Welles. What is going to be your second trailer for Scarface?
So my next trailer is a film that I watched finally within the last week as I was preparing for our discussion. I finally got around to this film because I'd been dreading it and I knew it was going to be good. And I think it's a good fit. It's Denis Villeneuve's Sicario.
You want to be a part of this?
Do we get an opportunity of the men responsible for today?
The men who are really responsible for today.
Ever been to Juarez before?
We're going to El Paso, right? You're not American. What do you work for now?
Well, I go where I'm sent.
Every day across that border, people are killed with his blessing. To find them would be like discovering a vaccine.
Nothing will make sense to your American ears.
But in the end,
You will understand.
Oh, I didn't even think of this. This is great. What did you think of Sicario?
I thought it was amazing.
Yeah.
And I love Villeneuve's work. And
Yes.
so I knew that it was going to be masterful. I have this thing about Mexican drug cartel movies that make me they really make me sad. I get very down. I think because my family comes from Mexico, it feels closer, maybe. And so I feel like a personal tie to that place.
Yes. It is speaking to your, sorry, this is very outsider thing, but it's speaking to something to your culture and your heritage and your life. But it's a very dark part of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
no, definitely. And so Sicario, I think, works well with Scarface because it's like, in Scarface, we're dealing with the influx of cocaine and other drugs in the late 70s, early 80s. And then let's fast forward. What does the drug war look like, 20, 30 years down the line? And it's gotten so big.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways feels so pointless.
It does.
There's a hopelessness to it. And I think too, the violence of Sicario pairs well with Scarface. Cause I know when I first saw Scarface, the levels of violence and some of the scenes, it seemed like some of this stuff was outlandish.
Yes.
People talked about it like it was outlandish.
Yeah.
What we know over these many years of hearing the 24-hour news cycle and getting international news about some of the violence that's happening in places like Juarez, Mexico, in Michoacan, Mexico, some of that cartel violence, like it's as bad or worse in real life.
Yeah.
Like, these are very real, awful, dehumanizing things that happen within that business and the violence that surrounds it. And so I think Sicario showing that, it shows that in a very bleak, very frank manner. And
kind of, yeah, but also it's very personal because essentially when you get into Sicario, it's not even about the drug war when you actually get down to what that final scene is, which I love about the movie. When you actually find out what Del Toro is actually doing in this movie and what his motivations are, it is, America has nothing to do with it, which I kind of like within the context of that movie, even though they are so involved in how the drugs move, how they're fighting it, how they're helping it. And you see that in Scarface a lot, especially with the corrupt police officers in Scarface. So you see everything, how so much of it's intertwined because it's all about the money. And these poor people who sort of get caught in the middle of it. But Sicario is such about a personal story. It's not even about Emily Blunt, and I love her in this movie. She's just kind of found herself in the situation which she has to deal with and trying to intake all this really complex information. No, I love Sicario so much. So I'm so glad you liked it because it's, yeah,
I did. I'm glad I finally saw it. And I like to think of these two films paired, setting a tone.
Yes, because they have very different tones, very different tones. But they are very sort of trying to investigate very similar things because you sort of forget how political Brian De Palma can be as a film director. Yeah, like he is asking these very specific sort of very complicated questions. He's doing it in a very outlandish manner, but those questions are still at the heart of it. So no, I'm kind of annoyed I didn't think this, actually. I didn't even think it's a Sicario.
Well, what you got? Because I know your second trailer is going to be a good one. They always are.
Do I go silly? No, you know what? I'm not going to go silly. I am going to end with another epic crime drama. One that I love, one that is more even excessive than Scarface. But that is Sergio Leone's Once Upon a Time in America.
4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse. You was better off you stayed in the Bronx.
Arnon Milchan presents Once Upon a Time in America.
Today they ask us to get rid of Joe. Tomorrow they ask me to get rid of you. Is that okay with you? Because it's not okay with me.
They belong to all of us together and to none of us alone. And we solemnly swear to put in 50% of everything we make. Agree? Agree. Agree. Agree.
I'm not interested in your friends in high places, and I don't trust politicians.
No, if we listened to you, we'd still be rolling drunks for a living.
I love this movie. I remember actually going to see it in the theater. They're playing the whole 4-hour thing. And it's really long and you feel the weight, but in a way you feel the weight of the epic. This is an epic in the true sense. This is where you can see time passing. You can see, because it starts with Robert De Niro's Noodles when he's a kid and James Woods' character as a kid, and they kind of grow up with each other. And again, they're differing. Like Noodles is always, we have to keep low. Again, that whole sense of you need to keep under the radar, and James Woods just can't do that. And it's very almost mystical movie, like weird things happen that you have no answers for. And it's Leone going full Leone, and it was his last movie, and I adore. I mean, the fact that the phone rings for half an hour at the beginning of the movie is insane. It goes on for so long. Like, someone pick that up. I do not care the fact that you're on opium right now. Pick up the phone. But it does so much to set up this kind of dreamlike. The whole movie could be a dream. The whole movie might not even be real. And you do get that sense with Scarface, as I'll get into Tony Montana. There's this unrealness to it that Once Upon a Time is a true masterpiece, and I love it. So yeah, that is what I'm choosing.
I love this. And you're reminding me that I am long overdue to rewatch it.
Yeah.
I saw it many, 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 many moons ago.
Yes. Yeah.
It's been too long. I need to revisit it. And the runtime, like it's long.
It's long.
It.
Yes. And to also try and watch it in one big, huge piece, because you do feel time. It's like if you watch The Godfather or trilogy in one hit, which would be 10 hours long. I realize this, but you would see time passing, and you do get that sense of just this time completely just slowly passing, and these people living these lives and making these very violent decisions. I mean, the kids are meant to be kind of scampy at the beginning, but they're literally committing arson. I'm just like, oh my God, these kids are hardcore. In the way the tenements of New York to, again, Miami, because that was where all the cocaine was and all this kind of thing. It's it's an amazing movie, and it's just got that Leone style, and it's just very dreamlike. He went fully dreamlike in that movie, and it's amazing.
Love it.
Yeah.
Great pick.
Yeah. It was either going to be that or Coming to America, and I decided to go a bit more serious.
I mean, either works really well.
It does.
I believe the children are our future. Thank you. Teach them well and let them lead the way. I decided long ago never to walk in anyone's shadow. If I fail, if I succeed, you can't take away my dignity. Because the greatest love of all inside of me. Yeah. Sexy chocolate.
Him singing Stevie Wonder, I think it is. But yeah, no, with that, we will be getting into the extraordinary Scarface.
I used to take me a lot to the movies, you know. I learned. I watched the guys like Humphrey Bogart, James Cagney. That teach me to talk. I like those guys. I always know one day I'm coming here, United States.
1980, Miami. They called it Little Havana, where the American dream had a price tag, and only one man in a million was hungry enough to pay.
This country, you gotta make the money first. Then when you get the money, you get the power. Then when you get the power, then you get the woman.
Scarface. For one brief moment, the world was his.
Now this is one of your favorite movies. What does this movie mean to you, especially when you first saw it, and then I'm assuming the other times you've seen it?
Oh, so I first saw Scarface as a teenager. This is one instance where I didn't see something that I wasn't supposed to under the age of 10. One of the few instances.
They waited. They waited you for Scarface.
Yeah. And I remember just being blown away. Because I grew up watching gangster films and crime films. The Godfather is my favorite film of all time. So I was already primed for loving the genre. And I can remember seeing Scarface that first time, being blown away by how De Palma creates a film that is very much in the spirit and touching on the themes of all the gangster crime films that came before it, while also making it uniquely his own and having something that is very much a part of that genre, but also kind of stands unique within it. And the violence, the language, the sense of humor that this movie has, the incredible performances, I fell in love with it, and I watched it a lot. At one point, it became a Valentine's Day tradition.
Oh, that's kind of perfect, though.
Every year on Valentine's Day, I would eat baked goods and watch Scarface because it's the most unromantic film, maybe.
Yes.
Definitely in the running.
Yes.
But it's a film. Yeah. It's so dear to me, this film. I just love it so much. And it's one that I think it's really interesting, kind of the trajectory of the film in popular culture. It was controversial when it first came out. It got some recognition, but was definitely not given the same recognition as some other films in the genre and some of De Palma's own work.
Yes.
In other genres.
It was considered lesser De Palma. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then years later, like in the 90s, popular culture, hip hop culture got a hold of it. And you find out how many people love this movie,
yes,
and rewatch it and identify with it on some level. It's just a really it's a really interesting film to watch. It's a really interesting film to think about, and it's really interesting to track its influence and its place in pop culture.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me a little bit of another trailer I could have chosen would be Wolf of Wall Street, because that doesn't exactly have the same trajectory, because everyone went, yeah, it's Scorsese, it's him doing Scorsese, it's an amazing movie. But there was this whole thing of, but it doesn't show that they're immoral. I'm like, no, yes, it does. You know what these people are doing are bad. If you're looking at Leo's character in Wolf of Wall Street and going, I want to be like him, that's you. And I think Scarface got a similar kind of thing. It's like, oh, they don't get it. I'm like, no, they get it. Tony Montana is the underdog in this movie until he's not. It's just he doesn't know he's the underdog. It's this kind of weird, he's got this trajectory of, oh, he's the underdog. He has to build himself up. It's the American dream. He doesn't know that, though. He's on top he thinks he's on top from the beginning. It's just a matter of him getting there. And then it all kind of crumbles down. But yeah, it's kind of a fascinating thing. And now I think it's kind of getting reappraised a little bit. Some people still think it's cheesy, which I think that's just Brian De Palma being Brian De Palma, because I think he's having fun with it. I think he's mocking Tony a lot. But it was, yeah, I saw this as a teenager. And because it wasn't Godfather or Goodfellas, I kind of rejected it. I went, oh, this is too gaudy. This is too ugly looking, which what I love about it now. I mean, the clashing colors, the fact that everything's red and pink and blue, nothing fits together. The color scheme is so 1982. Absolutely. But that's kind of what it was. And Tony's just reveling in it. He's just, Pacino keeps saying, Pacino went off when he did Scenes of a Woman. I'm like, have you seen Scarface? He's performing to the back of the backstage. He's fully going for it. And De Palma's probably egging him on, going, go bigger, go louder, go make that accent even more thicker. It's kind of an incredible mismatch of different things. And you can kind of get out what you want to, but yet watching it for this, I was like, oh, I can see De Palma fully in there. There are so many shots. I'm like, there he is, he's doing that. Oh, it's yeah. I was just like, oh my God, this movie's extraordinary.
Yeah. Well, and
it's an assault. It's an assault, but it's amazing.
It is. And I was really looking for that, the De Palma touch. All the places where I could see it. Yeah. Especially as over the years, I've watched more and more of De Palma's work.
Yeah.
And listened to podcasts like your own that have been evaluating his work. I really believe you could pull all the dialogue from this movie and watch it from start to finish with no dialogue, and you would still get all of that visual storytelling would tell you exactly what you need to know to follow the story, get the emotion, because of all of the little tricks and stylistic choices that De Palma makes, and the way that the performers are giving over these characters. You could absolutely not hear one word of dialogue and still get this story.
You could. It's all in the visuals. I mean, that scene in the assassination attempt in the club, when it's a typical Hitchcock, you know the bomb's under the table. It's just a matter of waiting for the characters to figure it out.
Yeah.
But he takes it one step further. Oh, they're on top. No, wait, not much time. Goes back under. It's just this amazing kind of this thing. And when he first gets into the car with Michelle Pfeiffer, he does that I can't remember what the technique's called, but it's a zoom out and zoom in at the same time. It's like Jaws on Rod Schneider's face. He does that for the car. It's such a small moment. You didn't need to do it because it's De Palma. He's like, oh yeah, let's do that shot when they're actually getting into the car to make the car look smaller and to push them closer together. It's such, there is all these little isms, and you know exactly what's going on without being told. You know his relationship to Gina, you know relationships to Gina to is it Manny? Stephen Bauer? You know exactly how that's working out. You know, Michelle Pfeiffer is fantastic in this movie. And the way that De Palma keeps making Pacino look smaller and smaller is amazing. It's when the more powerful he gets, the tinier he looks. And he's not like most actors, then he's not the tallest of men. And the fact that he keeps making him look smaller and just hiring people who are taller than him, I think it's hilarious.
And it tells you so much about what you need to know about his character in this world that he's stepped into.
Yes.
And the thing that he finds out about the American dream by the end of this story, it's tremendous. Because one of the things that really struck me this time, and I'd noticed it before, but I was really thinking about it on this rewatch, was, you know, in the beginning, Tony has a lot to say about authoritarian communism.
Yes.
In Cuba.
Yeah. He's a political prisoner.
About communism. He's a refugee.
Yeah.
And he's always complaining about, rightfully so, about the Castro regime and the suppression and the oppression of people's freedoms. And there's a switch that happens as we're getting ready to enter into the final act, where he's in that ridiculous bathtub.
I want a figurine of that with him in the
with the carpeted bath, this massive carpeted bathroom that's probably twice as big as my apartment.
Yes.
And he starts talking about capitalism in the same negative tones as he had talked about communism at the beginning of the film. Now he's talking about capitalism. The capitalism is just out to fuck you.
Yes.
And he's finally learned the lesson that, you know, the American dream is a sham.
Yeah, it doesn't.
At best, it's a fairy tale.
Yeah, and also he's
not real.
He's also being an authoritarian because he's telling Manny, "Oh no, you're not involved in this deal. I am." Oh, he's telling Michelle Pfeiffer what to do, and the whole point, Michelle Pfeiffer is like, "Do not tell me what to do. I don't like being told what to do. I'm my own person." And he's instantly going, yes, I realize capitalism and the American dream is a complete sham. It's smoke and mirrors. But yet at the same time, he is absolutely the king of his castle. And he is an authoritarian character. The fact that, spoilers, he kills Manny for marrying his sister because he wants control over her. And it's this really interesting look of this man who came from an oppressive regime making his own oppressive regime and knowing that it's all fucked. It's kind of extraordinary. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. Tony Montana is such an interesting character. And for Pacino to have played two of the most recognizable and memorable crime bosses in cinema history.
Yes.
And to juxtapose the two, a Michael Corleone with a Tony Montana is so fascinating to think about how these two very different men and what they do in that position of power, how they get there and then what they do with it. And Tony Montana is so interesting because he's right from the beginning, our introduction to him in that immigration interview. And right off the bat, he's got this charm and swagger.
Yes.
And he's very brash. He's arrogant.
Very, yep.
You can tell right off the bat, this man is, yes, he is lying about his past.
Oh, very much so.
It's clear he's lying because Tony is not, for all of the things he is good at, he he's not someone who can bluff.
No, every time he tries to bluff, he's usually failing at something. It's when he doesn't have that backup. You're right. Yeah. He's kind of flailing. Well, it's like him in the bathtub. Again, he's kind of flailing because I think he's starting to get the inkling, I have all the power, but I am starting to lose it because I don't have, my bluff is gone. I don't have Robert Loggia. I'm starting to lose Manny. I don't have those support networks that I used to have to be able to, I need something behind me when I'm bluffing. And he's flailing in that interview room.
Yeah. His machismo in this film is through the roof.
Oh my God.
All over the place.
His
identity as a man is so important to him. And it comes out in all of these really unfortunate ways.
Yes. No, this is what
this film.
Yeah. Before I get to that point, I just want to ask you, watching this for the first time when you love The Godfather, and Michael Corleone is a very specific time of crime boss. You see his rise, especially in, the original Godfather is The Rise. But watching this very calm, very understated performance of a man who's coming back into the family fold, opposed to then switch on Scarface when you first see him, and he's Hawaiian shirt, big accent, arms flailing, just spouting bullshit from the get-go. What was that sort of, was that hard to settle into? Or were you just like, I am here and let's go?
I love it because I think these personalities absolutely exist.
Oh, yeah.
The calm, disassociated man.
Yes.
Who's able to cut off his feelings and compartmentalize, and some things are business and some things are personal.
Yes.
And who's able to be cold and calculating. That works within the genre. The Tony Montana character does too, in his own really amazing way.
Yeah.
The guys who have the swagger and the bravado, the guys who, there's actually, in some regards, there's a lot that Sonny Corleone, James Caan,
yes,
rest in peace.
Yes, R.I.P. the great James Caan. Yeah,
there are a lot of similarities or parallels between like a Sonny Corleone and a Tony Montana,
and they both have the same eventual ending.
Yes,
End, yeah.
And it's that this tough, street smart, intelligent, all of those things, but also impulsive, also very quick to anger.
Yes.
Taking things personally, making things personal.
Yeah, going out of his way to make things personal. I mean, there are so many situations where you could have gone, you didn't need to go there, but you made it absolutely personal because you can't help yourself. He's Karen with the drama in a lot of sense.
No, definitely. And so, the Tony Montana character, it's also really interesting to juxtapose him with other characters within this story.
Yes.
And some of my favorite characters are the guys that work for him in his entourage. Chi-Chi, Nick the Pig, Ernie.
Yeah.
All of these guys who are very much in this life.
Yeah.
But they're okay with being foot soldiers.
Yeah.
And they do a lot of the running the household, keeping an eye on Tony's family. And these are guys that like they're working a job like as if they were working anywhere.
That is a really good point. I could have a different point of view the next time I watched it, but I couldn't help thinking that De Palma's making fun of Tony Montana quite a bit. The fact that he's this machismo, extra masculine thing, and it comes, as you were saying, it comes out in these very unfortunate ways because he makes everything personal. He's very quick to anger. He feels he has to have all this bravado, especially when they're seen when they take out Omar for being, which you never actually know if he is a foreman or not, but he apparently in that moment he is. And then he's all kind of, he has to realize he has to step up and be, so he's got this really massive bravado.
Oh yeah, I've got my word and my balls. I don't break them for nobody.
Exactly. That is such a great line. I got my word and my balls and I break them for nobody. So that's his whole thing. Yet De Palma always shoots him at the smallest man in the room. And this is Al Pacino. He's one of the great actors, just period. So he's never really shot that way. He's usually the way that they kind of make is usually as everyone else. Especially when you get to the bathtub, or the fact that he's always in pastel blues. There's always pink surrounding him, red, these very feminine colors, which I thought was sort of interesting because I think he's sort of saying, yeah, what you're seeing is just bravado. There's nothing actually behind it. And De Palma loves the duality of male and female that has happened so many times in his movies. Like Dressed to Kill, Sisters, all that kind of thing. And he loves it. And he's doing that, but he's doing it with Pacino as Tony Montana being Tony Montana. But in the background, you have this completely different gaudy scene going on that is fluffy and light and doesn't mean anything. And he only gets to that realization when he's in the bathtub with this massive cigar. And I'm just like, that pool, you could do the 50 length in that pool. That's not a bathtub, that's a pool. It's insane. And I kind of love that. And it's kind of saying, he's kind of telling you from the get-go, especially when he's in that interrogation room, do not take this man seriously. This man is full of shit. Yes, he's a refugee. That is true. He came from an oppressive regime. That is true. But the man is shady as all hell. He's maybe not the political prisoner he keeps saying he is, even though he kind of is, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah.
It's just the opening feels very Cobra, where they have the text of like, once the refugees started coming from Cuba in boats, there was 120,000 of them, 2,500 of them were criminals, and it's that kind of Cobra of like, crime is a disease and I'm the cure. It's this way higher number than it actually was. There was not that many criminals, except that Castro had a habit of like arresting everyone. So yes, these people would have been in prison because they're political prisoners, but then you meet someone like Tony who's like, I don't believe a word you're saying right now, and I love you for it. And so we
get evidence. They don't ever we're never explicitly told what Tony's life was like in Cuba. We do know he had been in the military.
Yes.
And we can assume that he's been in the joint.
Yes.
But we do, like, you get right from the gate, it's clear in his first dealings with Omar and the first drug buy with the Colombians that goes totally wrong, that Tony knows what he's doing.
Yes.
He's not new to this world. He is a man with experience. And that comes through. And he's pretty good at it.
Yeah, oh, very good. He knows exactly. Yeah. I mean, his first assassination is a political one because there's a guy up high in Castro's regime who's fallen out of favor and now he's had to run. But he was the guy who tortured a lot of people in prison. So it's, but you got this isn't Tony's first murder. It is not Tony's, he's not worried about it. In fact, he's excited about it because this guy has apparently done some awful things. So he does sit in this very gray area of, he's done some stuff. A lot of it may be due to circumstance, but he's already knows how to work multiple systems. So when that Colombian deal goes very wrong, especially for Omar, he knows exactly what to do. Okay, I've got to keep this going, got to keep this thingy, I've got my word on my balls, because I've been in this situation before. It's not like, oh, this is my first time and I need to figure it out. Even his mother knows. His mother's all clued on him.
and his mother is that quintessential, because in the backstory of when this film was being filmed, they wanted to film the whole thing in Miami, but there was concern from the Cuban community.
Yes.
About the portrayal. And they ended up having to move back out to LA to shoot. And, clearly Tony Montana is not meant to represent all of the immigrant community.
No.
But we don't see a lot of everyday other people.
That is the thing. I can understand why the Cuban community of Miami and Florida would be very nervous. It's
right.
Kind of like another Pacino movie he was in, Cruising, where the queer community is like going, really? That's how you're going. It's like one aspect of the queer community. It's not meant to represent the whole thing. But when you're just showing one thing, it sometimes can seem like that is. And
absolutely. And people are concerned. It makes sense.
Yeah.
And, Tony's mother gets to play that quintessential coming to America story. The woman who's here, who's working hard, who wants no part of Tony's illicit activities, who wants her daughter to go to school and get educated and stay away from her, the criminal element that her brother represents.
Yeah.
So she's like one of the few characters that we brush up against in this film that shows a different immigrant experience.
Yeah. And
immigrant status is a big part of this, in that coming to the United States for the economic opportunities, for this idea of freedom, and then the realities of what it takes, what it means.
Yes. The crime world has always been a really great metaphor for the American dream, because that is shown over and over again. Well, we even talked about them, like American Gangster, The Godfather, Goodfellas. Once Upon a Time in America is like, can you actually succeed at the American dream without getting your hands dirty? Can you actually just live an honest life and get all the things that you were promised when you've immigrated to another country? And the oftentimes is no. You can get by, you can have a good life, but there's this thing of promise of when you go somewhere and you have to deal cocaine. And also Miami in the 80s was known for its cocaine. I think I read one silly statistic, like it was like 70% of the GDP or whatever the economic thing is. It was,
I believe it.
It was high. And I was like, that can't be right. And then I read a few more things. I was like, no, it was the major import. It was the major import at the time, that it was everywhere. And I'm like going, oh, wow, that makes complete, I guess, sense, because it was a lot of the time it was the first port for it coming in. It was, and they do go into the economics of it quite a bit, which surprised me. I didn't realize, because they were talking numbers. They're talking who ships who takes care of what. And that kind of surprised me how much they should dig into the economics of
the
cocaine. The logistics of actually dealing cocaine. It was like I'm watching The Wire or that Netflix show where they actually really go into the economics of how this thing gets done. It was actually, it was surprising.
No, absolutely. And I love that they include that because Tony is such a bigger than life character, and because he is prone to acting the fool, in some ways, to then see the machinations of what it takes to run an organization like this. He's not a stupid man.
No, he knows more than Robert Loggia. That's
Oh, Frank.
Oh, Frankie.
Poor Frank. And I think that's one of the cool things about this film too, which I think is very smart. When you're going to make an organized crime film and you want to differentiate it from the ones that have come before. And I think this movie does a really great job of showing us the old versus the new. And so you have someone like Frank, who's kind of old school, and he's got all these rules, which of course he breaks almost immediately.
Yes.
Frank's approach, the way he talks about the business, sounds very old school.
Yeah. Oh, it is. Yeah.
And he's bested by Tony. Tony's the new thing. This new approach to the business. And you can see it in the visuals too, in the architecture, in the clothing, all this very flashy, artificial, plastic, neon colors, artificial lights, and And then when you go back to like Bolivia and you meet Alejandro Sosa.
Oh, Sosa, yes.
The kingpin in Bolivia that he ends up partnering with, that guy has old money.
You can tell, yes.
And his compound looks like old money.
Yes.
And so we get that juxtaposition of the old and the new.
It is very, the whole movie is about the old and the new money, which has always been a thing. I mean, like Australia and New Zealand, all the colonial countries and the States, we like to think there is no class system because we are not the UK.
Bullshit.
And bullshit.
It's like the most ridiculous thing.
I know. I don't know if Mexico has the same thing because of Spain, and they're like, we don't have the class system like Spain does. And you're like, yeah, you do. It's all about class, and it's all about that new and old money. And it's fascinating how it surprisingly keeps coming up. And yeah, Tony Montana, like I always, watching this, I kept seeing Tony Montana as a construct more than anything else, because he doesn't feel like a human being in a lot of senses, because everyone else is playing it straight. Everyone's a straight man to Tony Montana's bigness. And I actually think this works because he's the new money. He's coming in. He's all brash. He's got ugly clothes. He doesn't know how to decorate. He likes to have a globe with the world is yours in front of a gaudy fountain, which, by the way, I kind of want.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
He's turned this gorgeous old 1930s mansion into just like, oh my God, I'm not going to mention his name, but you know who I'm talking about when I'm going to talk about gold toilet seats. But it's that kind of thing. It's gaudy, it's messy, it's ugly, it's corrupt. You do not get this so quickly by being honest and truthful. Yes, you work hard. Tony Works is a hard worker. You can tell that straight away. But he's not honest. He will screw you over at the first opportunity. Even when Sosa says, don't fuck me over. That is the one rule. And it's a bit of a weird way he does fuck him over, because suddenly Tony gets a weird... What do you think of the assassination attempt? Just to go through a little early.
So it's such a great moment in the film.
It is.
The lead up to this, when Sosa and his associates play this interview to show Tony who needs to be taken out.
Yes, our friend.
And all Tony needs to do is take the assassin around. You know, and
doesn't even need to do the act. He just needs to drive him.
Doesn't even need to do it. He just needs to drive him around. But I love how sitting in that room, you're starting to see there's political figures, government figures. I think as high up as Tony is in the hierarchy by running this crime organization, there are people higher up the food chain than him. Yeah. And I think this is the point where he's starting to realize that as big as he's made it, there's always someone bigger and more powerful. And I think when we get to that assassination attempt and they're driving around in the car and they realize that the target has brought his family, his wife and 2 small children along, and they're in the car, Tony finds the limit. That realization of there is a line I'm not going to cross. For Tony, it's women and children.
Yeah.
These other people, these big politicos,
no problem.
Money guys, they have no problem doing this. They expect it to be done. There's enough money and power and influence at stake for them that women and children are collateral damage.
Yeah.
Who gives a shit?
This is when you're getting into actual war, which Tony hasn't gotten to yet. Because I was sort of wondering this when I was watching it, because there's never a hint of what Tony Montana's moral compass is before you get to that point. So when he sort of said, and all you've seen him do is kill people, all people within his own organization or what he considers maybe his equals, like other men who are also criminals.
Yes.
But you've never and even he will slap his sister around when he feels that she's stepped out of line. So all you've seen is this, and all of a sudden he's like, no women and children. But when you said he suddenly realized he's not the most powerful in the room, because there's a whole other level that's much more political, that's much more playing chess pieces with world politics and who's doing what. And the fact that the whole thing is they don't want him to do a speech at the UN, which I think is kind of significant. That makes sense because suddenly he's in a situation of which he does not have control and he does not like that. So that's when he puts his foot down and goes, no women and children. And that makes more sense to me than him just growing a conscience about not murdering someone when all we've seen him do is that. So yeah, that is an amazing point.
It's a great sequence.
It's such a good sequence. Yeah.
I think too, something that's interesting about Tony, like around family, when we look at his relationship with Elvira, with Michelle Pfeiffer's character,
yes.
When he meets this woman, gorgeous,
Michelle Pfeiffer.
Wife,
yeah.
He knows that she has a cocaine problem.
Mm-hmm.
We don't learn about her backstory, but we can make some inferences about how she ended up getting involved in these circles.
Yeah.
That would put her in the same room with someone like Tony. And once they're married, well, even when he proposes and talks to her about wanting to have kids. And like Tony has this very warped sense of the world.
Yeah, he does.
Like, you're going to marry this woman who hasn't given any indication that that's the kind of home life she would like to have.
Yes.
With you or with anyone. She's given you no indication, but Tony has this very rigid idea about you get married and a wife should be a certain way and a marriage should produce children. He's got all these ideas. His little sister, he's got this idea about she's my sister, so she's not like these other women I see in the club.
Yes.
She shouldn't be hooking up. She shouldn't be doing drugs. She should be, pure, virginal, virtuous. Yes. It's a really interesting thing about Tony.
No, it really is. He doesn't do well with women because Michelle Pfeiffer is, you don't get a backstory, but as you said, kind of what kind of person she is. And she's been living with Frankie. So it's not exactly the environment. Well, it could be the environment to grow, but she's kind of more arm candy. She's a trophy wife, essentially.
You know what she reminds me of? Lady Deadlock from Dickens' novel Bleak House.
Oh my God, yes. She is very much that.
Bored.
Yes.
Kind of above it.
Yes.
Jaded.
Yeah.
But smart. And no one takes her seriously because everyone just sees the facade of the beautiful woman on the arm of a powerful man.
Yes. She thinks Tony sees underneath. It. Yeah. She thinks Tony might see a hint of that because she keeps calling him the help, which I love. She's like, fuck the help. She definitely puts him in his place. But then she says yes to the marriage. She's like, oh, he might see beyond the facade, but what he's actually seeing is what he wants to see. There's nothing, he's not connecting with her. And I love when he goes over to his sister's and mother's house for the first time. First thing he says, I don't want you working. You don't need to work. And it's this very patriarchal thing of women don't work if their man can provide for them. And even Gene is, I like cosmetics. I want to keep doing this. So he does end up buying her like a beauty parlor. And her mother's just like, no, I work because I want to work. I want to do the right thing. And it may not be your life. But so, yeah, he does not understand any of the females in his life at all because he can't quite get out of his own way to actually see them for who they are. And Gina's like, she keeps saying, I'm 19, I'm 20. Yes, she is going to go to a club. She's going to fool around. She's going to wear beautiful clothes and like the attention. That's what 20-year-olds do. That is their main, well, not their main function, but that's kind of what they're attracted to because they're still kids but in adult bodies, and he can't quite you're not meant to go through your slutty stage. I'm like, no, we all have our however long it is and we enjoy it because it's fun. It's something that's not should look down upon, and he cannot get out of his own way. Like Scorsese, even though they're very male written, I love De Palma's female characters as much as I love Scorsese's female characters. I mean, Karen in Goodfellas I love her so much. And I love the woman De Palma's movies. And I think this is a good example of it. Michelle Pfeiffer has her own stuff going on. She's bored. She's a little kind of whatever, but she knows. I mean, she keeps even filling in the rules for Frankie when he's trying to explain them to him. She's like, don't get high in your own supply. She fully is, but she knows that she's not dealing. So she can just sit there and get and snort it up her nose and be fine and kind of whatever. But that's not a bother to her or anyone else. It's Tony that's getting upset that she keeps snorting cocaine. It hasn't really gotten her to the stage where she's in trouble. She's fine. It's Tony that keeps saying, stop doing that, which I think is interesting. Because she just leaves, doesn't she? She's just like, I've had enough.
Yeah.
I'm out of here.
We get the epic, and I love it. I love the dinner, the restaurant
build-up
sequence
is amazing.
The showdown in that restaurant. Everyone is telling some ugly truths.
Yes.
And, and Tony's obviously totally wasted.
Yes.
So he's talking about some pretty sensitive private stuff very loudly in this restaurant.
Doesn't he speak loudly? I love it.
Right. But he's saying, that they can't have kids and that she's always high. And it's like, well, yes.
Yeah. She was that before you married her. I don't understand where that.
Right. So you can't really, I don't know what you expected.
Yeah.
But that's on you. But then she counters back. What kind of a father would you make? You're talking about having kids. Why would who would want you to be the father of their kids?
You murder people for a living. Like it's
right.
Yeah.
It's a great moment. And I love too, after she says, I'm out, and she leaves, she's going to leave Tony, and he's sitting there in the restaurant. He's like halfway to being a complete stupor, but he's just giving his exit. And De Palma does that wonderful thing he does with those 360 and 180 shots.
Yeah.
Where it's kind of panning the room and we're seeing all of the reactions.
Yes.
Of the people in the restaurant. And this restaurant is not like the Babylon Club where you can see all the young people, all the people that are involved in the drug trade. No, this place is old money.
It's old white money. Yeah.
All these middle-aged white people dressed to the nines in their heirloom jewelry sitting around this gaudy, Baroque looking restaurant.
Yes.
And him saying, say goodnight to the bad guy. It's just epic. I just love it.
It is so good. It's kind of is that before the bathtub or after the bathtub?
After,
yeah. So you sort of get the sense that he's already in a stupor for most of it. There's a thing where you start seeing it occasionally, and then every time he's quiet, he looks like he's about to fall asleep. And that's because okay, he's doing too much drugs. He's getting high in his own supply, and he's not thinking anymore. He's not as sharp as he used to be because he's high all the time. And I love that you don't usually see him take a lot of drugs until the final say hello to my little friend moment, which is I forgot Oliver Stone wrote this movie until that scene. I was like, oh yeah, Mountain of Cocaine. Oliver Stone wrote this. Okay. Yeah, I remember that now. And it's kind of incredible that you don't actually see him, but he's always constantly just in a stupor whenever he's not moving. Like he has two modes. He's either falling asleep because he's so high, or he's having to pump himself up with cocaine because he's got to keep that energy up. He's got to keep that bravado up. And you see it take the toll on him, which I think is really smart move. Again, with all those sort of camera movements and stuff, and Tony just looking bored and hateful just because he can't keep his eyes open. It's so good.
It's incredible. It's incredible. And we haven't talked about the score. We
oh my God,
a little bit of music. But
yes.
The score to this is so awesome. It's Giorgio Moroder, who famous Italian composer, songwriter, producer, big in the disco world, but he also worked on other films. And I love the score for this. I love how there's moments where the music is like the music you would hear in a thriller.
Yeah.
And other times it's, dancey club music.
Yeah.
Other times we have the really sweet love theme that's played when Tony and his sister are having a moment, or when Tony and Elvira are having a moment. The score is really beautiful, and it really punctuates all these moments and really like supports the emotions that you're meant to have. It's really cool.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, Brian De Palma's always been a blatant filmmaker of letting you know how to feel about a certain moment, but the music kind of feels the most subtle part about the movie. Like you don't always notice it, which is very strange in a De Palma movie, because it's usually forefront. You're like, oh, yep, there's the sting. There's a Bernard Herrmann sting. I know exactly what's happening. But it's kind of incredible how this is kind of subtle, but it is, it goes from disco, it goes to classical, it goes to something else. And I kind of love it because De Palma is such an Italian filmmaker. He's an American Italian. It's how he makes his movies. And he uses that Italianness for the Cuban culture, which I don't know if it completely works. I'm not Cuban or anyway Latino, so all I'm going to say is I like it. There's someone you're going, that's a little bit of an interesting mix, but it's kind of cool that he's kind of bringing his own immigrant family culture to Scarface, which is all about the immigrant culture, especially the fact that this is based on Scarface, which is a kind of wrapped around oh my god, I'm blanking so much today. Untouchables, Robert De Niro, gangster. Him. Capone, which is again that kind of same figure in the 1930s. All the Italians were moving over, and I don't know. There's this kind of cool mix, and that music kind of captures that kind of influx of different cultures within the kind of thing. How there's always that influx of immigration that brings all the crime. Like in Australia, it was the Vietnamese for a while, or it was some of the Islamic community, even though we've had Muslims coming in from Lebanon since the 50s. It's like, really? Now? Oh God. And it's kind of, it's a story retold over and over again, but De Palma puts this on with this very specific flair. And I love the family base. Like I love his mother. You're right. She is the typical immigrant who works hard, and her sister is the typical first generation who is living two worlds and wants to be more in the American world, which unfortunately is going to clubs. It's fooling around with her brother's world, which is not always the best place to go. Like that exchange he has with Manny about, he's the guy that Montana beats up, and she's trying to defend him by saying, oh, he's a guy, he knows how to treat a lady. And you just hear Manny goes, he took you to the bathroom.
That's one of the great lines. There's so many wonderful comedic beats in this film. But before we talk about that, just to that's a great point that you made. There's always this concern, right? In countries around immigrants coming in and the discrimination and exploitation of people. And I think one thing that this film does, and I hope that it's something that comes through for folks when they watch it, is that, you know, when you other people, you know, it's like, I can only speak for here in the United States, but you have this, you build up this American dream about working hard and this freedom to succeed and this opportunity to succeed. And it isn't long after people get here that they realize that, you know, you're more likely to end up working poor.
The system is built up against you from day one.
Right.
And that is a little bit in Australia as well.
And you're othered. You're treated like the other. You're treated like the outsider.
Yes.
And a character like Tony Montana says he's going to take that otherness and he's going to run with it.
Yes. Oh, he does. Like when you mentioned the dinner scene, say goodbye to the bad guy, he knows what people think of him. I mean, you see that in the immigration office from the get-go, what they actually think of him. And he's playing up to that. He's sort of going, oh, you think I'm this? Okay, I will be this. And he's playing up to that otherness. And when he's working as the dishwasher, he's like, I didn't come back to come to the States to break my back. This is not going to get me anywhere. And it's not. But that is what a Cuban immigrant would be forced to do. It's like, oh no, you make us your food. We like your food, but we don't like you. And that happens all the time. And it's what it says about the immigration experience of being othered and what that can turn you into. Yes, Montana's all for it. Like he's from the get-go. He's like, okay, fine. Yeah, this is me. I'm going to do it. And I am kind of that criminal element you think I am, but he's kind of a product of his time and his place and what he's doing more than him making a decision, if that makes sense. He does that, but he's more, well, this is where you want me. This is where I'll be.
Yeah.
He wants to be owed money.
Opportunity has presented itself.
Yeah. If he could get like a high paying job or something like that, where he could move up the ranks, he would have done that easy. Well, also taking a lot of cocaine, that would not have changed. But
a lot of people were.
I mean,
it was the early 80s.
It was the early 80s. That's what you did. As we'll get into with Velvet, in the 70s. Yes. It's just that kind of the environment, but it is that otherness that which we'll definitely get into when we get into Velvet. It is the otherness and what that can turn a community into, especially if it's too exhausting to fight against it. And I think that does come through in this movie. And I think it's more complicated. Again, go back to cruising, exactly the same thing. If you want to turn a community into that one thing, that's what they will be. But if you allow them to be other things, they can, queer couples can raise children, they can be conservative households, they can be anything they want to be. But if you keep saying, oh, you're in sex clubs and leather clubs, that's what their only spaces they can go, that's where they're going to go. And it's the same thing with Tony. Yeah, that is a marvelous point.
And I think that's one of the great successes of this film is there are a lot of really big ideas.
Yes.
A lot of heavy themes centered around drug culture, the drug war, politics, economic systems, class systems, racial prejudice. All of that stuff is in here. And then you also have these really
silly,
fun, vibrant moments between characters. There's a great levity in this movie at certain points. Like one of my favorite exchanges is when they kill Frank because Frank tried to have Tony killed.
Yes.
And they kill the crooked cop that's there.
Yeah.
And it's this very tense scene. It's so tense.
Oh my.
Ernie, the bodyguard, is in the back and he's sweating.
Yes.
And he's got to be thinking, I'm next.
Yeah.
They're not going to leave me alive.
I'm not near the door. I can't get out.
And Tony says to him, Ernie, you want a job?
After a long pause, by the way.
Call me tomorrow.
Yeah.
And, and Ernie's kind of like, yeah, Tony. Okay. And then Chi-Chi says, it gets me every time. I crack up every time. He says, hey, man, you got a job. Like, and it's just the perfect way to close out this really tense, really violent scene, a heavy scene where people are being murdered in cold blood, where a cop is killed.
Yes.
And then you have this great exchange.
The way Manny and Tony look at him, like it lasts a long time. They're like, it's the thing of, do we kill him or not? And then just Tony goes, do you want a job? He's like, yeah, Tony. And then when Chi-Chi goes, you got a job. It's just like, it's so perfect. And De Palma does that a lot. He keeps building up an expectation and then kind of deflating it or making it into a joke, but not in a way that steps on the point, that just kind of goes, oh, okay, I survived. Okay, good.
Yeah. And it's like, you can have moments like that in the same, or like when Manny gets slapped by the woman after he makes the obscene tongue gesture at her.
Yes.
You can have scenes like that where you get like the nuances of these characters and it's funny and you can't help but laugh. And then you can also have a chainsaw murder.
I was about to bring that up. Yes.
It's great.
The chainsaw always comes out quicker than I expect. Like I never expect. Yeah. I expect a chainsaw. It's not like I don't. I just don't expect it to happen in the first bit of the movie.
Oh yeah.
which happens a lot. But no, I love the fact that also Manny is trying to feel up a girl in a bikini, not paying attention to what's actually happening in the apartment where this poor guy is getting his limbs chopped off.
Yeah, well, we'll get back to Manny because we have to talk about Manny.
Manny's very important.
That scene is so, again, the tension. Except in that scene, and I think it's purposeful that you have this really tense, really violent episode at the beginning to really let us know, like, this is the world these men are involved in.
Get go. Woman's holding a cannon.
These are the stakes.
Yeah, she's not holding a gun. She's holding a cannon. Like, that gun is huge. And then huge. And the guy just, so this thing's not going right, and then he just pulls out a chainsaw first thing. I mean, this is like when they kill Omar and they hang him from a helicopter. This is not. These guys aren't screwing around. When they're going to kill you, it's going to be painful.
There's nothing funny about this situation.
Not at all. Except for Manny hitting on the girl. But
yes. Oh God, Manny. So Manny breaks my heart because
he really does.
You know, he's Tony's best friend. And they do have this definite connection.
Yes.
You can tell that they know each other from Cuba. They came over together. They're in this together from the beginning. And Manny knows how to manage Tony, his moods and his whims, and they work well together. But Manny has a problem.
And that problem is
Manny
Gina.
has, well, you know, and the thing that gets me is that, you know, it's not uncommon for among friends for there to be a spoken or unspoken rule, like, please don't hook up with my siblings or my family members. It gets awkward. Things can go wrong. You know, it's kind of one of those don't shit where you eat situations.
Exactly.
So Tony's not 100% out of line in not wanting his best friend to be with his sister.
Yes.
You know, there's some possibility for drama there. But I think maybe Manny could have got Tony to come around on it eventually if he wasn't all the time flaunting his exploits and his approach with women at Tony. Tony knows what Manny's like.
Exactly. Yes.
So of course, Tony has to assume if Manny's like this with all these other women we meet on the street, how is my sister going to be any different? So I feel like, you know, Manny kind of,
he dropped the ball a little bit.
He didn't put his best foot forward as a suitor for to Gina, because Tony knows what you're like. He knows.
Yes.
He watched you stick your tongue out at that woman. He knows.
Yes, he knows exactly. No, Manny is a tragic character because I always, watching it this time around, I was just, because it's kind of, even I don't think Tony expects to shoot Manny when he does. It just kind of happens. But he just sees him in the house and he's like, oh no, he's been with my sister. Bang. But at the same time, you do see these subtle things of Manny trying to shift away from him a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, he's kind of getting tired of Tony's shtick. He's going, okay, I have to put out another fire because Tony got angry and I have to keep doing this. I just want the calmer life. And that's when he decides to settle down with Gina. And that marriage could have ended terribly because we have all seen all this evidence of Manny just probably not going to be able to keep it in his pants for a good couple of years, but it may have ended bad. It's going to be drama. And if things had ended better for Tony, then that would have been like part 2. But it's all these kind of quick reactions. And as we know, Tony doesn't think about anything. He doesn't want to ask, hey, why is my best friend barefooted coming out of your bedroom? He instantly shoots him. And he's already pushing Gina away constantly because he's always trying to tell her what to do because he thinks a woman should act like this. But but the fact is she did act in the way that Tony wanted to, as in to be virtuous and a good wife. And that it just is, there's all these kind of things, as you said, there's so many ideas and ways this movie is doing something that when you get the culmination of her opening the door, he's just like, okay, bang, done. And then he's like, I did something wrong. That's the one time you feel he's guilty about killing someone is when he's looking at Manny going, that was not my best idea.
Yeah, no, there is finally remorse. There is some remorse.
Yeah, because you never see. Yeah, it's absolutely too late. And I love when Gina comes into the famous scene of him with the cocaine, when she comes into the bedroom and starts mock seducing him because she's had enough. I mean, she's killed her husband. He's tried to control every aspect of her life. She can't just go and do anything. She can't be a young adult. She can't go out and make her own mistakes. She can't be kind of what a normal 20-year-old would do. I mean, I know she'll probably have her mother disapproving about that, but when your older drug lord brother has come into the situation, it's going to make things 10 times more complicated. And so she's kind of mocking him. And when she pulls up the gun, I'm like, yes, Gina, I don't know. I was
so good.
So good.
It's a great scene. I love it because, when she first comes in and Tony's out of it.
Oh, he is not capable. I'm surprised he's out to the gun.
Because substances and the shock of having just killed his best friend.
And then seeing your sister naked.
Yeah, there's a way.
There's a lot going on.
But I love when she starts talking and he's
trying to focus in on her. Yeah,
he plays it perfectly. He's kind of, you can tell he's kind of trying to focus, like he's trying to like he can't process what she's saying. And when she says, Tony, do you want to fuck me? And then all of a sudden he gets this look on his face, like this disgust and shock. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. It takes a while. Like she's walking toward him and she's touching herself and you can tell, but I love the way that Mary Elizabeth Mastrino plays it as well, because you can tell she's mocking it from the get-go. There is anger in her voice when she's saying that. She's making a point. But I love how he's just squinting at her and then he's like, oh no. Like you can tell the realization on his face too late, and it's when she's already got the gun out as well. Yeah. Like everything's kind of clicking into place and then she starts shooting. De Palma knows how to set up moment and climax. He's just so good at it.
Absolutely.
It's just
and the climax of this film, like,
it's legendary.
The grand finale is legendary. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's one of the greatest shootouts in cinema history.
Apparently Steven Spielberg was there on the day. He was visiting, so I think he helped a little bit.
Yeah, they had multiple cameras.
Yeah,
so it's my understanding that Spielberg hopped on one of the cameras at some point.
Because he was just visiting and Brian goes, hey, do you want to help me shoot the shootout? And he's like, yes, please. But that shootout, as soon as the bullets are coming through the door, he's hiding. He grabs his cannon. I love the fact that it's like a machine gun and a friggin' cannon. And of course, there's a reason why "Say hello, you want to play? Say hello to my little friend" is so quoted, because it is such a badass moment. Like
it's amazing.
He's not going. He may be so high at the moment, but he's so high that he thinks he can get out of this, and he's not going down without a fight. He's not gonna let Sousa's men just come in and riddle him with bullets. He's going to take as many guys as he can. And it's an amazing, there's a reason why the shootout's one of the most famous. It's incredible. It's so bloody.
I love, again, the building that De Palma does here. I love how, when Tony and Gina first arrive back at the house with the entourage.
Yeah.
You see someone coming over a wall.
Yeah.
It's like we start to see that the compound is being infiltrated.
Yeah.
And it builds and builds until we see just how many people are a part of this hit squad.
Yeah.
The number of people that they sent
to kill one guy,
to put Tony down, says a lot about what a
organization,
his station,
yes.
Like his position in the world.
Yeah.
That, they felt it was necessary to send that many people to get this job done.
Yes. And he did take out, incredible. And he took out a lot of them. It wasn't like, I mean, you do have the cool guy with the glasses kind of walking up and he's the one who's going to eventually take him out, and he does. But that whole scene of just him on the balcony, just laying into everyone and just screaming at them like, I'm Tony Montana. You think you could just come and it's
riddled with bullets and still going.
I really keep saying because he's being shot a lot. He's like, I'm still standing. You're not going to take me out. It's the guy. He doesn't notice that the guy's come into his office and stuck in behind. That finally does take him out. But it's an extraordinary last stand. I mean, he's not letting. Oh my God, he's been shot so many times.
Yeah, Tony was never, ever, regardless of when it happened.
Yeah.
Tony was never going to go out like Frank on his begging.
Nope.
You know, Tony was always going to go down fighting because that's just the personality of Tony Montana.
Yes. And I love the fact that he falls into the fountain that has the gaudy, the world is yours. I think which is just this nice little full stop to Tony's life. It's just, and nothing is, only the mother is left of that organization, and she wasn't even in it. Yeah. But everything's gone. Everything he built is gone.
No, absolutely. And it's, that old adage about he who wears the crown, and the bigger they are, the harder they fall. It's all of those cliches apply here.
Yes.
It's very much the oldest story in the book, except with cocaine and tropical Miami skyline.
Yes, and disco, because this is 1983, which is probably when disco was starting to fade out, but not for Tony. He's going to keep that going as long as possible.
Yeah, this movie's incredible. So many wonderful performances. The whole vibe of this film, it's so good. It's
so good. Even talking about it now, I think I love it more because just amplifying a few things, just where Tony sort of fits into it and just kind of the organization, how it's run. I mean, this is such an intricate movie. You can just see the freshness of it, but it is so intricate and how it's done, what it's talking about and everything like that. No, it's an amazing, amazing movie. Anything else you want to say before you move on to the Velvet Goldmine?
I would just say, I would encourage anyone who hasn't watched Scarface in a long time.
Yeah.
Rewatch it.
It's going to surprise you.
It's going to surprise you. And it's just fun to watch.
It is actually really fun. Like I forgot it was 3 hours. I'm like, oh, this movie's 3 hours. And then it just went by really quick.
Yeah. The pacing is great. Well, I was thinking about this recently.
Yeah.
Because I still have my Scarface VHS.
Oh, wow.
And it's one of the 2 cassette VHS. But I was thinking about this recently. We talk a lot about how movies these days are too long. And I think that that's true. But there are some, there used to be some films that were longer, that were more epic in scope, that were upwards of 2.5, 3, sometimes hitting up to that 4-hour mark. But it was because the stories that they were telling were so big that it earns all that runtime.
Oh, yeah. No, I've always been I am getting into a bit of a habit when I look at a runtime. I'm like, oh, that's 3 hours. But it all depends on the movie. It has to, the story of the movie and what the movie feels like should dictate the time, not the time dictating the movie. When you start doing that, that's when you start getting these overlong, bloated kind of movies where you have, a really long movie can have more quieter parts, and you can sometimes feel like, go back to Scorsese again, The Irishman. I feel that runtime, and there are definitely quieter moments, but I'm never bored because I'm so invested in this very long, epic kind of story that he's telling, and that's okay. But when you start going, oh, we need to make this movie 2.5 hours, then I'm like, well, what have you got for that 2.5 hours? You need to, yeah.
What does that extra half hour, hour add to the story? Exactly.
Yeah. That's what you need to start into.
Some stories don't need it.
No. And mostly
movies absolutely do.
Exactly. Brian De Palma is not a director that makes a habit of making 3-hour movies, but when he's making Scarface, especially when he's remaking a movie that's 1 hour and 10 minutes, I kind of love, but you needed the time to understand the world that Tony Montana was working in. If you have a 90-minute cut, all you're getting is him shouting. You don't get those moments between him and Manny or him and Pfeiffer or him and Gina, or kind of understanding how the mechanics of this world works to give you that backstory that it's not giving you, but this guy's been in the world of cocaine for a long time. He already knows exactly what's happening. And I think that's a really important way of doing it. Don't make a movie long because you think you need to give people that money's worth, because they're going to get bored, because you're not focusing on what the story is. You're focusing on what you think the product should be. And that's kind of the worst way to make a movie. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. And saying that, I love an hour 10 movie. I will watch if I only got now. I'm like, I'll watch a Universal Monster movie. It's great. But I also will sit down and I will watch Once Upon a Time in America. Because that is a true epic of a movie. It is telling a breadth of a long story, and Leone is doing certain things and want you to spend time with certain characters and how they evolve over time. And what I love about Scarface, it's that it's not Tony evolving, it's the world evolving around them, and he doesn't quite know how to cope with that. So it's he's becoming
to adjust.
Yes.
And not doing a very good job of it.
He does not know how to adjust at all. And I think that's kind of when the world leaves you behind, do you end with it or do you try and adapt with it? And he cannot adapt. So he goes out in a massive blaze of glory. It's Scarface is extraordinary. And I think it does get, but it's not thing De Palma. I'm like, oh no, you watch that. I mean, it's he's in there. He's doing his De Palma thing.
To beautiful effect. I think
absolutely. Yeah.
All of those kind of De Palma-isms are used to wonderful effect in Scarface.
Yes. He knows how to use his Brian De Palma-isms to tell a story, not to just do them for the sake of doing a De Palma-ism, which I've always loved about him.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you need a break before we go into Velvet, or are you good?
No, I'm good.
Okay. We're going to go straight into a movie that blew my socks off. Oh my God. Where has this movie been all my life? The Velvet Goldmine.
Wait, was this your first time seeing this?
Yeah, this was my first time. I knew about it. I heard about it, but I did not expect.
Holy shit.
Oh my God. Yeah, this was my first, I had never seen this movie. I've been meaning to. And when you said, can we watch it? I'm like, finding an excuse to track down the DVD.
Schlock and all listeners, I am shook right now. I did not realize that Lindsay had not seen this. Oh, beat still my heart. I love conversations like this with a first-time watcher. Okay.
Toni Collette in this movie. Oh my God. I did not realize she was capable of this, and I love Toni Collette. Oh my God, she reaches past God tier in this movie. So what on earth do you show for a trailer for why is this movie forgotten Velvet Goldmine? And it should not be.
So my first trailer is Ken Russell's Salome's Last Dance from 1988.
Angel of the Lord, why are you here with your sword? Whom do you seek in this foul palace? The day of the one who will die in a scarlet robe has not yet come.
John the Baptist.
Who speaks?
John the Baptist. I'm in love with your body. Your body is white like the lily of a meadow that the scythe has never cut down. Your body is as white as the snows on the mountains of Judah, which descend to the valleys. The roses in the garden of the Queen of Arabia are not as white as your body.
Oh, again, another one I haven't seen. I know of this.
Highly recommend it.
Yeah.
It's a gorgeous film. So the premise of Salome's Last Dance is this is wild. It's set during Oscar Wilde's life, and Oscar Wilde goes to see a performance of his play Salome.
Oh.
So you see the stage production of Salome.
Yes.
Which is the story of the beheading of John the Baptist.
Yep. And
you see Oscar Wilde and all of this cast of interesting characters that are the audience for the play.
Yes.
But it's really beautifully done. The costumes are gorgeous.
Yeah.
You have all of these very androgynous looking people in these gorgeous costumes, and you have the people of the audience and Oscar Wilde, and they're laid out on divans, languidly enjoying wine and whatever. It's decadent. It's irreverent. It's beautiful.
Yeah, because I have to admit, the first 5 minutes of Velvet Goldmine, I stopped it, checked the disc to make sure it was the right one. I was not expecting that opening.
Yeah.
No, it makes perfect sense. And I have heard of this movie. I didn't realize it was actually Oscar Wilde going to see his own play. But which kind of adds, because his plays were being, he was a playwright. And that is absolutely, that would be a magical trailer, because the more I watch of Todd Haynes' work, the more I realize he's more of a chameleon director than I ever thought he was. Like, I thought he was a very straightforward, because you see 2 films by Todd Haynes, you think you know Todd Haynes. You go a little bit deeper and you're like, oh, he's like not a mimic, but he kind of does take on different personalities in his movies. And this is a very early 70s Ken Russell-esque Oscar Wilde kind of movie. So this sounds like it's the perfect trailer. Yeah. I was like going, this is a little bit of Ken Russell. But he does. And he's such, this sounds like it's the perfect trailer.
I highly recommend you check out the film.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous.
Oh, I absolutely will. Okay, because you went there, I'm going in for Chua. I'm going to go back and do my Orson Welles theme, but I'm going to show the trailer to Citizen Kane.
Citizen Kane is a modern American story about a man called Kane, Charles Foster Kane. I don't know how to tell you about him. There's so many things to say. I'll turn you over instead to the characters in the picture. As you'll see, they feel very strongly on the subject.
Charles Foster Kane is... Sure, he started the war. But do you think if it hadn't been for Mr. Kane, the United States would have the Panama Canal?
Charles Foster Kane is nothing more or less
than a communist.
Kane, governor. Listen, when the voters of this state and Mrs. Kane learn what I found out about Mr. Kane and a certain little blondie named Susan Alexander, he couldn't be elected dog catcher. I'm going to skin Mr. Charles.
Oh, nice.
Because it is a very similar structure. It is a journalist trying to find the story of the truth of a very enigmatic, can't say the word, character, much like Kane is in Citizen Kane and much like Slade is in this movie. And you don't need Christian Bale in this movie, but it makes it better. And the structure of going back, it makes it more unreliable. It makes it more Ken Russell. It makes it more ethereal. So we might as well go to the one who did it first and might as well keep my Orson Welles thing going. And we're doing Citizen Kane.
No, it's perfect. And I think tonally, that's another thing that's interesting about Citizen Kane, which is also interesting about Velvet Goldmine, is that you do have these moments of levity and these, these wild scenes, but there is a melancholy. There's always this longing.
Yes.
That's just under the surface.
Yeah. Yeah, and apparently Todd Haynes was directly influenced by Citizen Kane as much as he was by Oscar Wilde and David Bowie and all those other things, which I kind of like because, so it's, but there is that moments of levity with this very specific longing. And yes, it is Rosebud in Kane, and it is, still don't know what it is with Slade. I'm still trying to figure that out, but I'm going to have to watch it multiple more times to figure that one out, and I'm looking forward to it.
You will. and we'll talk about it a little bit.
Yeah. Citizen Kane, what is going to be your second trailer?
So my second trailer is Caravaggio from 1986, directed by Derek Jarman.
allow me to introduce the hero of the hour, Michelangelo Caravaggio.
Ranocchio! Achille, you're blind. I did it for you. Blood brothers.
You're in love with him.
With his money.
You're in love with him.
Oh, perfect. Yes.
And I chose this because, again, we have an artist who is trying to make it, in this case, Renaissance Italy, patronage.
Yeah.
You have, there's what it takes to become a successful paid artist, a gay man.
Yeah.
Dealing with the struggles within a society that isn't supportive of his sexuality. And what I love that Derek Jarman does with Caravaggio is there's all these scenes where it looks like a painting. It looks like a Caravaggio painting. And it's like a work of art. There's all of these scenes in the film that are a work of art. And you get like a character, Sean Bean's character in Caravaggio looks like you could sculpt him out of marble. He's gorgeous.
Oh, and he's usually gorgeous to begin with, but I've seen images of this movie. And he is.
It's next level unreal.
Yeah.
And so I just love how you get the story of this artist's life and it's rendered like a painting.
Which Velvet does a lot. And I love the fact that Caravaggio, I can't say his name, was an outsider artist until he wasn't. Until he became very much accepted within the mainstream, which is I'm going to be geeking out about David Bowie, so I apologize for this. But that was David Bowie. He was the outsider until he wasn't. And then he was the establishment, which I think Velvet covers really well. And he wasn't, David Bowie never wanted to be the outsider artist. Iggy Pop, yes, he was fine being there. He didn't really want to, he just wanted to create, do heroin and not wear a shirt. But David Bowie had ambition. And this is really shown in Velvet through Brian Slade. I keep wanting to call him David, but it's Brian.
Yeah.
And I love this idea for a trailer. It's such a good idea, just that because of the texture, and the texture you're going to see in this movie is incredible. And I absolutely love it.
What's your second trailer?
Oh, my second trailer, I guess it's basic, but I don't know how you don't play The Man Who Fell to Earth before you play Velvet Goldmine.
Nothing you have seen or heard about David Bowie will prepare you for the impact of his first dramatic performance in The Man Who Fell to Earth. This is another dimension of David Bowie, one of the few true originals of our time.
You're really a freak. I don't mean that unkindly. I like freaks.
Is this a weapon?
A weapon?
Well, it's too small for interplanetary travel.
So you assume that it's a weapon. If I stay here, I shall die.
What do you mean? Take me with you. I'll see you don't die.
No, that's not basic at all.
I only saw, again, this is one I only saw a few days ago, or yesterday maybe. I can't remember the time. Because I've always been meaning to watch it. It was David Bowie's first major film role. And he is an alien in this movie. He is so ethereal and so beautiful. It is about an alien who comes to Earth to try and buy all Earth's water, but then gets sucked into, kind of like Tony Montana in a way, gets kind of sucked into the to the American dream.
Yeah.
And the mass media of it all. I mean, there's a famous shot with him just watching so many amounts of television because he's just inert to the experience. I would actually say maybe it's a bit long, but I think that's what Rogue is going for. I think he wants you to feel the boredom a little bit of David Bowie's character of just being, this is amazing. This is so sucked in. This is new technology. Everything's great. And then just going, huh. But it's an extraordinary movie. I'm still kind of grappling with Nicholas Rogue a little bit. like I have a memory of watching Witches as a kid, and didn't realize that he directed that. And when I watch one of his movies, I'm having to sit down and go, I'm going to have to pay attention because this is a very different mindset to what I'm used to. But I think Rogue is also really good, like Russell, like Jarman is a really, and Orson Welles is a really good director to play in front of Velvet Goldmine, because Todd Haynes is being a little chameleon, and when you've only seen Carol and one with Julia, Not Far From Heaven, Slight Far From Heaven, his Douglas Sirk movie, you think that's what he is, and he's so not that. He is so much more punk, and that is kind of what this movie does. And yeah, so I'm playing the man who fell to earth.
No, I think that's a great choice, and that's one I've been meaning to revisit. I didn't see it for a long time either. I think I finally got around to it within the last few years, and
it was kind of hard to find for a little while.
It was, and I don't know what I expected. I liked it, and there was so much craft to it, and then there was also, I don't know, there was some nagging something.
Yeah, it's not a perfect movie. There's something to it that I haven't quite contended with yet that I need to. I'll go back and rewatch it, definitely.
I need to too.
Yeah. There's a lot going on in it that I haven't quite got my head around yet, which is a lot with Rogue. So, but yeah, but you can't deny the fact that you can't take your eyes off David Bowie in that. He is
absolutely, no, the casting is perfect.
Yeah.
And Bowie's performance in that, coming through a trailer before watching the Velvet Goldmine, I mean, I think that's a great fit. Especially
because this period is very much the period that we're dealing with Bowie. I mean, there's other performances you could have chosen, but since Bowie is also such a friggin' chameleon and likes to would change his image every 10 years, it's not the Bowie in Velvet. That is a very different creature. Yeah. And and with that, we're going to be getting into probably one of my favorite discoveries of the year.
That makes my heart so happy.
Oh my God. The Velvet Goldmine.
Brian Slade was the wildest rock star to come out of London.
The biggest thing since sliced Beatles.
But that wasn't enough.
We set out to change the world.
What happened? Who did it? And why?
Next week is the anniversary of the whole shooting incident.
One journalist is about to look into the mystery.
I was trying to contact you about a story.
From the moment Brian Slade stepped into our lives, nothing would ever be the same.
He was, in the end, like nothing he appeared.
Right after everything crashed, Brian seemed to get lost in the lie. Became someone else.
Miramax Films invites you to throw away your expectations and take a magical trip back to the 70s. When the glam scene rocked London.
Yeah, where did you first see this? So mine was a few days ago.
I saw this when it got released on home video in 1999.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I still have my VHS copy.
You were saying yes, because I
bought. From the first time I watched it, became obsessed. Obsessed. I could not get enough of this film. The Velvet Goldmine incorporated all of these musical, literary, pop culture things that spoke to me, that were so meaningful. The energy of this film, the message of this film, the way that the story's told, everything about this, I was just in love, madly in love with this movie. I was obsessed with the soundtrack. I was obsessed with finding out everything I could about the production of this film.
Sounds insane.
Bought the screenplay. They put out the screenplay.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And I bought it. I adore this film. And it's one that I've revisited many, many times. It's one that I used to show a lot of people like, oh, you've never seen Velvet Goldmine? Let's watch it. So it makes my heart, you don't even know how happy it makes my heart. This was your first time.
First time
to share it.
I
just love that.
As I said, the first 5 minutes, I actually stopped the movie, took out the disc, and double checked the fact it was Velvet Goldmine, because I knew it was a movie that was and wasn't about Iggy Pop and David Bowie. That's all I knew about it. I don't think I even knew for ages Todd Haynes directed it. I just knew it was this kind of thing where Jonathan Rhys Davies. Myers. Sorry, why did I write Davies in my notes? Jonathan Rhys Myers played a Bowie-like character. I didn't know Christian Bale was in this. I didn't know that Toni Collette, Ewan McGregor. So that's all I knew about it. And I knew it was kind of hard to find. It kind of disappeared. And I thought that must have been because of the music rights. Because I also knew that Bowie didn't like this movie. he said, yes, you can use my music, found out what it was about. No.
He declined.
Oh, he declined. Okay, I thought he said yes at one point, but he actually said no straight away.
No, he declined.
Yeah.
There is not one David Bowie song.
Nope.
In this film.
Yeah, there isn't.
The only song that comes close is Satellite of Love by Lou Reed from the Transformer album is used in this film. Bowie produced the Transformer album for Lou Reed, and you can hear his backing vocals on that.
Yeah.
On Satellite of Love. But no, Bowie, Todd Haynes asked, and Bowie declined to let him use any of his music. So all of the music you hear in this film is other bands of the period. You get Brian Eno, Roxy Music, Steve Harley and the Cockney Rebel, T-Rex. I think there's a Slade song in there. So
there's original music as well. Did they write?
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say because
there's a few original songs. There's covers of Roxy Music songs. It's just the soundtrack's incredible.
The soundtrack's it's so long, but it's amazing. So watching it and realizing that it has the Oscar Wilde element to it, and that how it's kind of that little piece of jewelry that was with the baby, and then kind of gets passed on to different kind of people throughout the movie as this kind of it's okay to be different, it's okay to be queer, and which I absolutely adore. And then you get all the Bowie stuff and all the music of that time. It's not just Bowie, that just happens to be what Myers is playing, because I've always found Bowie so fascinating because you can never get a handle on him. He was always so protective of his image. He rarely let movies use his music. In fact, his estate his family still doesn't. I mean, I don't see the point in making a Bowie bio if you can't use Bowie, but they tried. And all this kind of thing. He was so protective of his image. And to have a movie that kind of starts to try and chip away at that image, to try and figure out, okay, who was this person? Why did he do the things that he did? And every single time he changed his image, he would change his marriage, he would change kind of everything, his personality, seemingly almost. So who was the real Brian Slade is a question this movie keeps asking. And I love how unreliable it is, not just in the sense of the fact that you'll listen to interviews, but even Christian Bale's of Stewart's memory, you don't even know if that's real. It could be mixing with fantasy. Surprisingly, Ewan McGregor is actually a pretty good Iggy Pop. I mean, they mix him in Lou Reed a little bit, but I was
the Kurt Wilde character is he's a little Iggy Pop, he's a little Lou Reed.
Yeah.
The Brian Slade character is clearly mostly Bowie. There's a couple of other little things in there, but it's mostly Bowie.
Mostly, yeah.
And that's, I mean, this film is not a biopic.
No.
It's pretty damn close.
Yep.
Because the parallels are so glaringly obvious.
Yes.
But I think it gets away with being so close to a biopic, but not being a biopic, in part because this movie deals a lot with the storytelling and the dreaming that makes up the rock star.
Yes.
The star persona.
Yes.
And and how they can, how you construct this persona, this image, this story about yourself, and then sell that to the world. And the repercussions.
Yes. Is you lose yourself. You're not who you are anymore. And because I love the first time that Brian Slade sees Kurt Wilde on stage. And it's a very kind of Lou Reed Iggy performance, as in the crowd's hating him and he's just feeding off it and just throwing things back.
And Ewan McGregor is singing.
He is, yes. Everyone sang, except I think they dubbed Myers with Tom York a couple of times.
No, actually. So
Wikipedia. This is why I shouldn't read Wikipedia.
This is really cool. This is a really cool thing. So the Kurt Wilde character, played by Ewan McGregor, sings songs, but they're covers of Stooges songs.
Yes.
And that's Ewan McGregor singing.
Yeah.
And it worked because, Iggy Pop has a really
gravelly,
raspy, gravelly voice, and you don't have to sound like Frank Sinatra, No. So Ewan McGregor makes it work. And then for the Brian Slade songs, their original idea was that they would dub over all the singing, and Tom York was the vocalist on a lot of those songs. However, turns out Jonathan Rhys-Meyers can sing, and he was interested in doing it. He asked if he could record a demo. They let him. They were blown away by his voice. So he sings on 3 of the tracks.
Yes. Yeah. Because I knew he sang as well, but then I sort of read this thing about Tom York being in there. I'm like, oh no, Tom York would be kind of a good double for Bowie. They've both got that kind of higher.
Yeah.
And Myers is a little lower. Cool,
Mm-hmm. If you listen to all of the songs that the Brian Slade character performs, it's like some of them are actually Shudder to Think.
Yep.
The band Shudder to Think. Some of them are the Venus and Furs band that was put together, which is headed by Tom York.
Yes.
And some of them are Jonathan Rhys-Meyers. So there's actually several different voices that make up the Brian Slade performances.
No, that makes me love it more because I was a teenager in the late 90s. So yes, of course, I love Radiohead and I love Tom York. It just what happens. But it does make him more of a chameleon because even though when he's singing covers, and I love that video he does when he's dressed in the blue, when he's dressed in the Rococo French thing, and he's doing that whole big thing and that whole amazing song. And you cannot get a kind of a track on his voice. Sometimes it will just subtly change, which I love because Todd Haynes would do this when he makes his Bob Dylan biopic, when he just kept changing the actors because Heath Ledger sadly passed away while filming. So they just went, well, just put a whole bunch of people playing Dylan to get his different kind of, which is a genius idea. And they kind of do, but he kind of already does that in Velvet. But because he gives this, they just keep changing who Jonathan Rhys-Meyers is. You never get a handle on exactly who this man is. At one stage, he's the man that falls in love with Toni Collette, and one stage, then he's the guy wants to be with Kurt Wilde. Then he's going to be that weird Bob Geldof thing at the end. I thought, oh, that's the Bob Geldof character, 1984. That fits. And then you find out it's Bowie, and they do that close up. I'm like, oh shit, no, that's Ashes to Ashes Bowie. That's right. That's definitely Bowie. That's one of the most head on Bowie looks that you see in the movie. It's kind of incredible, and it's this kind of whole kind of thing. But I love how you never get the voice on the handle, but I could hear it because Myers definitely, I think I got it, was when I think he's a slightly lower register. So when he's going a bit low, I'm like, okay, that must be him. But so really surprised at the fact that when I sort of was reading, I was looking, I'm like, oh no, Ewan McGregor is Iggy Pop. I was a bit worried, and then as soon as I saw him on stage, I'm like, nope, he's got it. He's done. That is it. Yeah.
I will admit here to all of you, fine Schlock all listeners, I mean, I rewound that part of the tape.
You have to.
A lot of times to watch Ewan McGregor do an Iggy Pop-esque performance of TVI in leather pants covered in glitter and oil, and then take off his pants.
Yeah. And that is something Iggy Pop did multiple times. It wasn't like it came out of nowhere. Yeah. But no, you have to. That is, I wasn't expecting that. When he mooned it, I'm like, okay, yeah, that's it. Oh, wait, he's going full Iggy. Awesome. It was kind of surprised. I was like, hello. So like I had to hunt for it, like in with Kevin Bacon in Wild Things. It was just right there.
No, it was right there. You can't miss it.
You can't miss it. Yeah. He wags it a little bit. He's like really getting into it.
And Brian Slade didn't miss it either.
That his reaction when he sees him is amazing. He's like, I'm not annoyed. I'm annoyed I didn't think of that. I should have thought of that first. It's the instant jealousy, which is why he wants to get to know Kurt Wilde, is because he goes, I want that energy. I should have thought of it myself. Why didn't I? Yeah.
Yeah. The Brian Slade character is, there's just so much to dig into with him. He's got this androgynous look.
Yes.
And during his Maxwell Demon period, he's very much playing up
the androgyny
and bisexuality.
Yes, it's a question I want to ask you later. Yeah,
and he has all of these very archetypal masculine traits. His physicality is kind of aggressive.
Yes,
like when he meets Jack Ferry, the originator of this androgynous persona that's very authentic to this person and who they are. And he's kind of like an underground scene celebrity, but not like a celebrity.
Yeah. And if you know who Jack Ferry is, you know who Jack Ferry is, but
when Brian Slade meets him and he wants to take from him some of that essence to use to build towards his own ambitions. And he comes on to Jack Ferry like no words, just like tongue down his throat.
Yes.
Like jumps him to make out with him.
Yeah.
Just this real physicality, this very like take what you want.
Very much.
Don't ask, just take it. And he takes the pin, the Oscar Wilde pin, that totem of self-acceptance and individuality.
Yes.
But all throughout, he's a character who he knows what he wants. He's very decisive and ambitious.
Very ambitious.
Calculated.
Yeah.
Everything is a calculation. And I love how throughout this story, we see the people who get left in his wake after he's moved on to the next phase. They're
kind of done. They're kind of broken versions of themselves. That's what kind of most fascinating, because the glam rock most. I don't remember much about the time of actual glam rock was big because I wasn't born yet, but I know it was very, very androgynous. It was very kind of thing. So a lot of people were able to come up through glam rock and be more accepting of their own queerness, and whether trans or anything like that would have been a little kind of oasis during the rest of the world. But since Brian Slade is so calculating and so ambitious, do you think the whole bisexuality of him was more of a front, or do you think he actually, because he is obviously attracted to people like Jack Ferry, Kurt Wilde, and Toni Collette, but it feels more like a front that you don't actually know what his sexuality is, where there's everyone else, you know fully where they sit. I mean, there's even a moment at the beginning where Kurt Wilde goes, I don't understand. Everyone's saying that they're bisexual. I don't understand how that's sustainable. You are what you are. And you can be. That's not saying you can't be bisexual. It's just sort of saying,
if you are, you are.
If you are, you are.
You're going to have a hard time.
Exactly. You're going to have a hard time keeping it up because that's not who you are. It's like someone being in the closet. It's like, it's just too hard to sustain because it's not who you are. And I was just sort of watching, and that's very pointed and very at the beginning. So I was kind of watching it going, oh, what is Brian Slade? I mean, and I don't think it's me being nosy, which I can be very nosy when it comes to this kind of thing. Like, it's
no,
like,
and this is very intentional.
Who do you sleep with? Just for my own personal nosiness, but this is very intentional of what actual sexuality, because you're right, he does take the pen of self-acceptance, but does he use it for good or does he use it for terrible or for bad? Does he do it for honesty or does he do it for because he thinks that's what he wants to present to the world? He's more of a construct than anything else that people are allowed to read upon, or what he wants to present to the world, because he is so, as you're saying, he's got this androgynous look. He can be very feminine, but at the same time, he's very aggressive and ambitious in the way that a male would be. So it's, and I think that's a purpose answer. So it's kind of like Christian Bale is allowed to be a fan of his and become his true self. Though he does, you find in the 80s, he's kind of hiding that a bit. But it allowed him to be a bit more self-accepting of his own self and to experiment a bit more, whereas he was looking at something that was ultimately fake. Right. And even Bowie, you hear rumors, but you never quite knew where he stood. So it was...
and that's very much a part of what this film is trying to get across. Yeah. That, in that time where there's this glorious movement towards more openness and sexual freedom, the freedom to be who you are. Yeah. Or, but there is also an element of the shock value. Yes. Of, and that's something that would come into play again during the punk years.
Very much. Which is why Oscar Wilde keeps being called a precursor to punk, is because he liked to go out and shock people. Right. Make them uncomfortable. So
it's very much a part of this film, that question. Does it really matter what the answer is?
It really doesn't ultimately, but
it doesn't really. Yeah. But it's a question that does come up in the film. It's a question that came up throughout Bowie's career.
Yes. And he was always very cagey about it.
He made statements in the 70s.
Oh, he did. Yeah. He was.
And then later on, he'd walk those back. And so there was always a question of what was the truth. Not that it's any of our business anyway, one way or the other. I mean, but we can't help but, and that's the other thing. And that's one of the beautiful things about the Arthur character, Christian Bale's character, Arthur, is he's the stand-in for the fans. Yes. The people who fall in love with the music and look at these musicians and artists, and we identify with them, and we want to see little pieces of ourselves in them, and we want to know them on this deeper level because they mean so much to us. The music and the art they create is so meaningful to us. We want to know them and understand them. And we can't ever really.
No, because it's all a persona. And that's fine. But you're right. We do want to know who these people are, and we're interested in them. And so when you get, because even Lou Reed was the same. He would make statements, and I think it was more, look, as much as I love Transformer, as much as I love Velvet Underground, Lou Reed was a dick. He was just, that's what he identified with.
Notoriously difficult personality.
A very notorious personality. So he would, and then in the 70s, a lot of the punks, a lot of, I don't know what you, Velvet's Velvet's his own thing, but they like to go out and shock people. That's why you had a lot of the punks dressing up in Nazi garb. They weren't Nazis. They just like to get their reaction until you got the actual Nazi punks, the famous Dead Kennedy song, Nazi punks, fuck off, or fuck off Nazi punks, whatever it is. It was kind of this designed thing. And in the early 70s, having someone like David Bowie, Iggy Pop, Lou Reed coming out and saying, well, not so much Iggy, you're just like, where's the heroin? But it was sort of more, I'm bisexual. That's even more shocking than coming out and saying I'm gay, because people look at that and they go, so which is it? How can you be with one person then if you like?
People have a hard time wrapping their minds around that.
They really do. It's easier for someone to say, okay, I like the same gender as me. But when you come out and say, I am bisexual, they will just look at a person and go, how? It's a hard thing to wrap their brain around. It's just like, no, you just could. you're just it's you are who you are, and that shouldn't matter. But there's a nosiness to human beings where we want to know about other people's sex lives. And the more outrageous it seems, the more we want to know. And this movie feeds into that. But at the same time, it realizes that it's a deeply private thing as well. And that's what I love about Christian Bale's performance as Stuart Arthur, or Arthur Stewart, is because he is that this is private, but at the same time, I'm attracted to it. I'm allowing myself through this music I love to be actually who I want to be. But time he's back in 84, you can tell he's he's still open, but you can tell he's not flaunting it as he did in the 70s.
Yeah.
He's whether that's becoming an adult or realizing he's in the States or a different place or kind of whatever, it's not I mean, there's a great line at the beginning where he goes, "Oh, because I'm the resident Brit," and there's a pause.
Yeah.
You want me to look at Brian Slade, but I'm just going to say Brit instead of the word he could have used. But no, it's fascinating about human sexuality and acceptance, but at the same time, that construct of celebrity, it's very much dealing with the sort of a similar thing that Scarface did, but in a very different way.
No, definitely. And there's Oscar Wilde is used throughout this film.
Oh yeah. Quotes of his are used. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, they're everywhere. It's chock through, but to perfect effect.
Yes.
Todd Haynes picked out the perfect quotes and used them at just the right times.
Yeah.
And there's one time when Brian Slade quotes from The Remarkable Rocket.
Yeah.
One of Oscar Wilde's short stories. "I knew I should create a sensation," gasped the Rocket, and then he went out. And that's this story.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's the story of Brian Slade.
Yeah.
This wanting to change the world, wanting to create a sensation, wanting to have the spotlight, and getting there through all of these outrageous performances and this big persona and acting like a star in the entourage, and ultimately completely burning out.
Yeah.
It's not sustainable.
No. And go back to Bowie. Bowie knew it wasn't sustainable, which is why he kept changing his characters over and over again. I mean, Brian Slade fakes an assassination attempt. I think Bowie actually said he murdered Ziggy Stardust, his kind of that persona he was having in the 70s when he was being his most outlandish. But yeah, it's this guy who wants to be the greatest celebrity. But he knows he can't sustain it. He can't go out on a balcony in a flame of bullets yelling, "Say hello to my little friend." He knows he can't do that. So he does something else. And it's more mercurial. It's more kind of, again, going back to that pen, it's going to be passed down and keep changing throughout time. And it still does. I mean, that's what the notion of, I have a very young coworker. She's 19. And so sometimes she says things, I'm just looking at her, I'm like, "You're so young." But we were talking about she talked about Taylor Swift, and she goes, I said, "Oh yeah, because she started as a country music singer," and very with such sincerity, she goes, "Yes, female artists have to change their brand every so often, otherwise they'll get forgotten." I went, "I know this." I grew up with Madonna. I grew up with David Bowie. Yes. I am aware that musicians do not keep the same. They have to evolve. But just coming out of the mouth of babes, I was just like, "Oh, you're so adorable." Yeah, of course, Taylor Swift has to change her image because that's what all musicians have to do to be viable for more than a few years. And again, this is what this thing is going into. It's about a time and place in London where the likes of, you've got punk coming in from the beginnings of punk coming in from the States. You have the beginnings of glam rock coming up in the UK with T-Rex, with Brian Eno. Brian Eno's American, isn't he?
No, Brian Eno's British.
Brian Eno's British. Okay, so I am doing.
Yeah, Brian Eno was one of the members of Roxy Music, and
yes, he was.
And did his solo.
Yes,
and did his solo thing.
Yeah. And you have kind of, again, sort of Bowie, and you've got this kind of, these two kind of different, very similar but different music movements starting to come up. I mean, the Americans would have the Ramones, it would have Velvet Underground, it would have all these kind of things, and the British would do their thing. And they kind of melded together really well. So eventually the Brits would put in like the Damned and the Sex Pistols and Joy Division, and that kind of really blended the two sounds together. But I kind of find it fascinating that you're making these two kind of movements that only lasted a couple of years. Glam rock wasn't a thing that was around for a long time. It was only like when I saw Elvis, you realize pure Elvis was only like from 53 to 55. It was
right.
It was really like Hound Dog and Blue Suede Shoes were only like a couple of years, and then he had to change again. So it's or he got sent away to the army. But it is these music kind of grand musical movements don't last that long, and it's just a fleeting moment. And that's what Velvet Goldmine really gets into, the fact that it's named after a B-side song of Bowie's. It's forgotten, it's disposable, this music we love, but yet when you're a teenager you love the music you loved when you're a teenager. Like, I'm never not gonna love the Pixies, I'm never not gonna love Stone Temple Pilots, even Backstreet Boys, because I was a teenager. The music you loved when you're a teenager, you stay with. And the music you listen to when you're older reminds you of this 2-year period when the Beastie Boys released Ill Communicate, whatever it was. Sorry, I did this when I was talking about friggin' Beastie Boys in another episode. I get the albums wrong. I do love Beastie Boys. That's the music that stays with you, and you have the same thing. You've got bands that adjust who you are because you listened to them when you were 15, and that's how it works.
No, it is. And it's this film, I love that we get to see, like, the opening credit sequence is gorgeous.
Oh, yeah.
Because we get to see all of these young people dressed in their platform shoes and their glitter eye makeup, running down the streets of London, and Brian Eno, Needle in a Camel's Eye, is playing in the background.
Yes.
It's got this great tempo, upbeat, and all of these young people running, and just like the carefree, it just really perfectly captures that feeling, even for those of us who were not alive in 71, 72, or for people who were too young to have participated actively at that time. Like, but we all know that feeling when you're young and something captures your imagination and you become a part of loving something and being part of a community of people that love something. And there's all these really wonderful concert scenes in this film.
So many, yeah.
Captures these gorgeous stage performances of these characters as musicians performing, and then cut with all of these images of the audience singing along and dancing. And it's hard not to watch this and want to sing along and have this huge grin on your face, because it taps into that feeling.
It really does. And even though I, as a teenager, was more into more contemporary 90s music, I still know what that feeling is of wearing a short skirt, those god-awful platform sneakers that running around, going to a gig, because I think the New Zealand band She Hard was playing somewhere, and me just bolting, dressed up to the nines, really short skirt, these freaking big sneaker heels that were big in 97. And you still get that same feeling. It's a different band, it's a different time, but it's kind of the same. I mean, I know you especially love this early 70s music because you love T-Rex, you love Roxy,
love all this stuff.
You love Bowie, you love all this kind of stuff. So you're watching this going, okay, I may not have been at that concert, but this is my jam. And I know I still did things that were still very, very similar. I've always said that if I could go back anywhere, it'd be 1975, so I could see the Ramones at CBGB's. I think it was 75. You would probably go back to 1971 London, so you could go see Roxy musical or T-Rex.
Oh,
even.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd be there with the platforms and the big makeup and the long hair.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. And this film just really captures the spirit of that and the feeling of that. And it's funny the way that 1984 is portrayed in this film. Arthur is in New York, and it's like, but it looks like
looks very clean and corporate for New York in 1984. But
it looks like it looks like George Orwell's 1984.
It does.
You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
It's like everything is bleak and drab and gray. All the people are wearing
identical suits,
chromatic and like drab outfits.
Yeah.
And like hardly, like, no one is smiling. It's
and even I can't remember what his name is, the one that you assume Bride Slade is turned into. He is talking about
Tommy Stone.
Tommy Stone. Which is why I thought he was Gandalf, because he's talking about this massive concert where everyone's going to be watching by satellite, and that, of course, was Live Aid.
Live Aid.
Yeah. That's how they talked about Live Aid. So yeah, it is talking about everyone's watching and these satellites, and it's kind of, it is very much this more. And 1984, it was much more of a conservative time than it was in, say, 1971, where you always go through ups and downs of which is progressive and which is more conservative. And in the 80s, you're really running into, I think they call him Ronald, not Reagan. President Ronald is doing an excellent job. I'm like, oh yeah, I know who you're referring to. But it's that Reaganism, it's Thatcherism, it's Reaganism, it's all that kind of thing, which was really kind of starting to hit home in 1984. So yeah, it's a definite point. It was not the Wild West of you could do anything in 1971. It was very much, no, there are rules now in 1984 because you're in 1984.
And you're starting, I think you're also, it doesn't address it head on, but there's hints. Like when we meet, because this is the early 80s moving in towards the mid 80s, which we all know the AIDS crisis hit, and
his best manager in the wheelchair.
Yes. When you meet Cecil, and it isn't addressed, but he's in a hospital. It seems like a hospice or something, like long-term care, and he's in a wheelchair, and it's not hard to imagine that he might be sick. So and that character is a great character. I love him.
Oh my God. When he waves hello to Eddie Izzard, he goes, I have a manager. Hello. No, you don't. It's just like, oh no, poor Cecil.
So many great characters in this. Yeah. Eddie Izzard's character, the bombastic manager who takes over and helps to build the persona of Maxwell Demon for Brian Slade. And Cecil, the person who discovered him at the Sombrero Club and who's a really nice guy, but he can't make him a star.
No, he's never a bit of a laugh. Like, he wore a dress to the concert. I just thought it would be a bit of a laugh. Like, that's kind of, exactly who that man is. It's, there are probably more references to actual real life people that I don't know enough, but Cecil's adorable. And you kind of feel sad when I know, and when David Slade is just like, Brian Slade is just like, oh yeah, I need to go to the next big flashy thing, which is Eddie Izzard. And because he can make him a star. He can actually, though I do love how you see the trappings of being famous, but you don't actually see him be famous except for the news accounts of the fake assassination. Yeah. It's fascinating. You don't see his fans. The more famous he gets, the more isolated he gets from people, which is an interesting way to shoot it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's one of the things that struck me watching, because I watched these back to back. I watched Scarface. Yeah. And then I took a break, and then I watched Velvet Goldmine right after. Yeah. Is the visual storytelling in this.
Yes.
And And the way that the recollections and flashbacks get very seamlessly interwoven with the interviews.
Yes.
And the footage of these concerts and promotional videos, and then an overlay of headlines. It's really masterfully done. It turns it in, it's almost like this collage of visuals that paint this much bigger picture of the glam rock period of music and the lives of all these people that are involved. It's just really well done. I think it's an incredible feat.
Oh, it is.
To take all of those elements and the way that the story is told and to be able to pull it off is just incredible.
No, it really is. Because everything's so seamless. Like, I love Toni Collette in this movie. I think what she's doing is holy shit, because, and even I love the way you can kind of tell she's not the most reliable narrator is because her accent keeps changing depending on what time period she's in. I had to rewind it. Like, I was like, wait, I thought she was British. Why has she got American? Oh, and then toward the end of the movie, you can see it fluctuating. Like, he's actually sort of saying, no, but she's
supposed to be like Angie Bowie.
Yes. Yeah, as I said,
who was an American living in Britain.
Yes.
And yeah, it's a thing.
It is a thing. And then I had to go, oh, wait, because she's Angie Bowie and Angie Bowie was American, but she did put on like when Madonna lived in Britain and was suddenly British. Same thing. It happens. But no, I love her so much because she is the dedicated person who's literally Brian Slade's right-hand person. Without him, probably without Angie, would have Bowie gotten as big as he was, and without I forgot her name. Her character Mandy. Without Mandy, would have Brian Slade gotten as big as he was. Because I was recently watching the George Carlin documentary, and it was this really, they didn't shy away from it. They showed the contradiction of him being this amazingly progressive person, yet very traditionalist, as he wanted his wife at home. And every time he got too big, he'd forget his wife. They were able to come back to each other and actually form an actual partnership, but it took years and multiple substance abuses later. But you'd see the same pattern. As soon as he got famous, his wife didn't matter. And it's the same thing that happens with Mandy. She's doing all the groundwork. And as soon as he gets a little bit of thing, she's just in the corner having to do her own thing. And it's not, because obviously in the movie, those two have a very open relationship. When you're having a cocaine-filled orgy, you're just with anyone.
Right.
Yeah.
As you do.
I mean, it's the decorum of the time.
It's a lovely orgy scene.
It's a gorgeous, oh my God, it's so good looking. I mean, it just, I'd go, yeah, I'd hang out. But what she's kind of breaks them apart is because she does not matter to him or is not able to help him within his career like she was before. And I think a little bit happened that with Angie and so many other partners of people who become successful when they start getting in the mechanics of promotion, management, everything like that. That partner is kind of superfluous to requirement. And that's kind of what gets her. And I think it's a beautiful moment when she's confronting him in the bedroom. You just see wafts of cocaine just like flicking around the room.
Oh,
she's waving and cocaine's just everywhere.
And almost all of the barbs they're throwing at each other are again Oscar Wilde quotes.
Yes, yeah.
But the best ones for the moment. And so it's very dramatic and these people are so angry, but they're being witty while they're doing it.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a great scene. And she's a great character. I also really love when we see her and Kurt Wilde have a moment in the flashback to the Death of Glitter tribute concert.
Yes.
And even though Kurt Wilde's relationship with Brian Slade got between her and her husband.
Yeah.
They still are able in this moment to come together and hug and and like care about each other.
Yeah, they do.
Having gone through this thing together.
Yeah.
Having been close.
Yes. And what I love about it is that Arthur Stewart is able to kind of remember those moments when he goes, oh yeah, it was that farewell to glitter thing. And he's like, which gig? And you realize, oh, wait, I was at that gig. So when I was watching Kurt Weill perform, and I remember I saw you there. And then, so you're telling me that Brian Slade was there. Oh, do I remember him standing in his memory and his fantasies, which we'll get to whether you think him having sex with Kurt Weill actually happened or whether it was his fantasy or like that. Everyone has the fantasy of actually having a moment with, whether it be sexual or moment with your idol. Whether that actually happened or whether that was just a fantasy that's concocted from that night, I think is really gorgeous. But you don't see Brian's face; he's just in the doorway. You just see the hat, and the coat, and you know it's that silhouette shows it's him. But it's a really great moment of really blending in memory and fantasy, and also people who everyone fills in the gaps of your memory. That's why you never have the same memory as your siblings. They'll go, no, it was a green car. No, it was because you're filling in those gaps yourself. But it kind of builds into this amazing moment of Arthur Stewart and Kurt Weill having a night together. And it doesn't matter if it's real or not. That's not the point. I just like to kind of go, oh, that could be fantasy, or that might not be.
Let's talk about this.
Yeah.
So here's, because one of the things that I love about this film is early on in the film, after he gets the assignment,
yes,
to do this story, and there's a narration, and he's talking about his reluctance to do this story, and he says he's talking directly to someone, but at that point in the story, we don't know who the you is. Who is he addressing exactly? He says something about, something was spooking me back.
Yeah.
It was you. And we don't know who the you is. And throughout the story, when you rewatch this, I want you to look for this.
Yeah.
Every time he's doing an interview and someone mentions Kurt Weill, the camera will go to Arthur's face. And Christian Bale does this wonderful job of having a change of his expression when he hears the name Kurt Weill. And it's hard to read his expression, but there's something that changes.
Oh, I'm going to have to look up at that.
Every time he hears the name, it cuts to him and there's a change in his eyes or in his mouth. All along, he's reacting to that name and we don't know why.
Yeah.
And the first time you see it, you might not catch it.
I don't think I did.
Viewings, you'll start to catch it. So when they meet, when Arthur shows up at the bar and he's kind of dejected because the story got cut and he knows the truth now about Brian Slade, but nobody gives a shit anyway.
Nope.
And he's gone through this whole emotional journey of, reconciling with his past and remembering this beautiful time. And it's a time you can't stay there forever.
No. And it's also the time he came out. This was not, that's why it's so important to Stewart, because, okay, yes, this is a music that was able to him feel more empowered, but it's the actual time he actually came out to the world and said, this is who I am.
It was this tumultuous process and painful and exciting and scary and all these things.
So it's not like a small deal. Yeah,
absolutely. And when he sees Kurt Weill, it's really interesting to watch them kind of this dance they do of after when he's finally faced with Kurt Weill face to face. And you can see that Kurt Weill's kind of dejected and down too.
Yeah.
And Arthur strikes up the conversation and he's trying to be confident. And it feels a little like it's an act he's putting on.
Yes.
Like he's putting on a brave face. But he just has to talk to him about this story because no one else gives a shit. But he wants to kind of confirm that he got to the truth. And in the course of their conversation, he points out the pin, the Oscar Wilde pin that Kurt Wilde is wearing. And Kurt Wilde starts to tell the story of getting the pin. And it does one of those beautiful seamless transitions. We see what Kurt Wilde is remembering. And he's remembering the moment that Brian Slade put the pin on him.
Yes.
And then he remembers Arthur.
Because this is why I need to watch it again. I always thought that Kurt Wilde did not remember Arthur. That
he does.
Oh, he does. Oh, because I read it as he just did not remember him.
He did it first.
Yeah.
In that moment when he's telling that story.
Yeah.
His memory of Brian Slade then leads to a memory of the night with Arthur. And that is when he tells Arthur, here, keep the pin for your image. And Arthur, I think at that point still reads it as Kurt Wilde doesn't know who I am. He doesn't remember me. Because why should he?
Yeah.
All the one night stands after all the gigs over all those years.
Exactly.
You wouldn't expect someone famous to remember having slept with you that one time.
Yeah.
And it's one of the most beautiful moments of this film when, you know, Kurt Wilde says, hey, well, bye, I'll see you around. And you notice like there's like a slight change in the way he talks to Arthur.
Yeah.
From that point forward, he leaves. Arthur takes a swig of the drink
and then
finds the pin is in.
Yes.
And he gives this smile.
Yeah.
The most genuine, adorable, sweet smile.
Yeah.
Because I've always read that to mean he realizes
that Kurt knew,
that Kurt Wilde remembers.
Yeah, because the way the sex scene is shot, which is absolutely beautiful because it's almost done in like 38 home movies.
Yeah.
And then when they're actually having sex, it pulls out into this gorgeous beautiful zoom out, and the whole sky is filled with stars. So it kind of feels like almost like a fantasy
it does.
memory. And when I first saw it, they eating at the bar, and I remember when they were at the gig, he was sort of watching Mandy and Brian Slade hug, and then he also remembers watching Kurt, and they look at him, he gives a small smile, then looks away, which is what I would totally do if I was staring at a famous person. I'm like, oh, you look at me, I'm just going to do right over there. And then it kind of, the way it transitions into the them on the roof, there's a certain point where it becomes beautiful and kind of gauzy and fantasy like that.
It's very dreamy.
It's very dreamy. So I always kind of, when I was reading that, I'm like, oh, I don't know if this happened or if this is this is an actual memory, or if it's specifically a memory. Yeah. Or if this is a fantasy that he had, which doesn't, in the end, doesn't make a difference, because you're right. There is a recognition on Kurt Wilde's side, but as a fan and someone who's like him, and I want to give you the pin because I think you're deserving of it, not as in, oh, I do remember this great night we had together. Because he wouldn't remember it. You establish this is a character that is very in the moment. He doesn't necessarily remember things, mainly because of the heroin. He doesn't remember things that happen. I come back to the drugs. I'm not belittling this movie. It's just Iggy Pop is preserved like a pickle because he took so much heroin. So even he said there are just times, yes, I don't remember. And also notoriously a difficult personality to get along with. And that kind of thing. So it's this kind of cool moment of when you realize Kurt Wilde is the real one. He's the one that actually is authentically himself. And that's why he gives the pin that is why he gets the pin in the first place. And that's why he passes the pin on. Because I only realized we're talking, oh yeah, it was Jack Ferry you saw as a kid who finds the pin after he's been beaten up by, that's Jack Ferry. He finds the pin, and it's this process of passing it on. And it's Brian Slade who takes it, but he may not have been deserving of that pin because he might not be, you don't know how authentic he's being because he keeps restructuring his image. And that's what I took it as. But I love how dreamy and how ethereal and beautiful that scene is of them on the roof. Because it's a really cool moment. At first they're hanging out, they're drinking, and then they go intimate. And the transitions in this movie are just mind-blowing. And that 70s zoom-in shot that he keeps doing, which is so 71. Like, Todd Haynes knows his film history. I mean, I'm understanding that more and more that I watch him, even like Dark Waters, when he's doing this kind of very legal procedural Aaron Brockovich movie, but yet he understands what the image of Teflon means to their family unit. And there's a whole bunch of, I'm not going to go on detail because that movie's amazing and I love it. Scariest cow in a movie. But it's, I kind of read it as I didn't know if it was true or false, but that reading, I'm going to watch it again to get those little nuances of look, because I didn't think I recognized him at all. I thought he was just like, I don't know you.
Again.
Yeah.
And I'm curious. It's been a long time since I read through the actual script.
Yeah, because that's not the shooting script. It's the original script before they edited it down, or is it the...
Yeah, this is a screenplay from before it got edited down.
Yeah.
And I don't recall. I'd have to go through it and see if he remembers, if it explicitly says it. But yeah, I've always read that as in that last little moment, he has a flash of recognition of recognizing him.
Yeah. No, it's beautiful regardless. And I don't think it ultimately matters if...
It doesn't really matter.
It doesn't matter. It's more, he could recognize him from that night or he could recognize him from something else. It doesn't matter, but it's more the fact that he chooses him to bestow the pen on and to give validation to know, one, you're right about everything that's happened because you now have got the pen, and also who you are. You are true to who you are. You don't, so you get the pen. And that is such a beautiful ending to that movie. And it's a gorgeous, gorgeous movie. I mean, I was not expecting how baroque, how gorgeous, how flamboyant, how much glitter, how much kind of androgynous beauty would be in this kind of movie. I'm just watching the first half going, jaw on the floor going, oh my God, how have I never seen this movie before? This
makeup
is astounding.
In this movie is incredible.
Oh
it
my God,
nominated
so
for
good.
awards for costumes. And it shows because the costuming in this film is absolutely gorgeous.
Yes. It is all so perfect. And because we talk about how, which I'm not sure if it's you or with Mark, might have been more with Mark, I've just talked about it, which funnily enough, The Prestige. So I did not realize that the first 2 episodes of the De Palma series, we're going to have Christian Bale and Bowie holding the whole thing together. But there we are. And it's this kind of thing of De Palma always wears his influences on his sleeve. And we talked about this in Scarface. He's there. His love of Hitchcock is in that movie because guns under the table. No one else knows. That's the tension. Bomb under the car. And this one, Todd Haynes is showing his influences of not necessarily 70s filmmaking, but just 70s vibe in general with the zoom ins. Like they're always constantly zooming in on someone's face in that very specific, say, Sergio Leone way, because he would do it and that got copied a lot. The almost news reporter images, especially of the kids running up around the stadium, the news reports, the almost 8mm home movie feel, the way the transitions work, the promotional videos. You can tell he loves this stuff because I think Poison, one of his first movies, has a lot of Velvet Underground in it. I haven't seen it yet.
So I just watched Poison.
Yeah,
first.
I
think I did actually rent it ages and ages ago, but remembered very little. And so I decided it was time to rewatch it. It's a really interesting film. It's really cool. And you can see all of those little Todd Haynes touches.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's cool because the film it's like 3 different stories mashed up into one film, and they're like 3 different styles of film. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, because he's actually, because I'm just looking at his filmography now, and it is such a chameleon-esque kind of thing of movies. Like, I think the first literally Todd Haynes movie I saw was actually Carol, which is so much more of a Douglas Sirk-esque, very prim, gorgeous costumes kind of movie. I've seen Far From Heaven, which I always get confused with All That Heaven Allows, but again, more of a Douglas Sirk kind of story. Then you get Dark Waters, which is kind of an Aaron Brockovich legal procedure, but again, the way that man uses blue is phenomenal. I'm Not Here. I was really like his Velvet Underground doco. You can still see Haynes, the way he structures everything.
Yeah.
I don't know. But the more I'm kind of digging into it, the more I realize, he wears his things on his sleeve, and he's also quite a chameleon director. If he wants to do like a Ken Russell riff in one movie, doesn't mean he's going to repeat it again in the next movie. It's just that's what he thinks the tone's going to need in that particular moment. Or in Carol, it's much more stately and statuesque because that's what the story kind of calls for, because it's in the 1950s, and he's always using pop culture of the time to influence how he's going to shoot something. And I'm becoming a much bigger Todd Haynes fan than I thought I was, because he can just take a time, and even something that's set in modern times, he'll still use the pop culture references and all that kind of thing. It's magical. Yeah, he's so good.
Highly recommend the Velvet Underground documentary.
I second that. Yes.
It's gorgeous. It's really cool because it's a documentary that feels like an experience.
It really does. They're trying to capture the Andy Warhol experience, which yes, because
so
again, he's
fitting.
Yeah,
it's so fitting. It's like this was a band that came out of this art movement that was all geared towards experience.
Yes.
The multimedia experience. And then this documentary about that band is an experience.
It is.
It's very cool.
It's constant sound, it's constant images, it's constant everything. But that's kind of what the Velvet Underground were, especially when they were being managed by Andy Warhol, because that's what he wanted. He didn't see them as a band. He saw them as an art piece. Like, we'll have people filming them in art images around, and it's going to be other music playing. It's going to be, it's an experience. And that would have been, I don't think I could have handled an early underground the concert, because I'm like, okay, can we just do 2 things? Do we need to do all 5? And then to add friggin' Nico in it as well, and just goes, we'll just throw her in there as well. I just why not? Why not? I love her singing. She's a terrible singer, but I love it so much.
I love the Velvet Underground.
Me too. I have to be in a very specific mood. Oh my God, I would love. As I said, I would actually go back to the factory. Is another one I would probably get annoyed within half an hour.
So much trouble.
I'd get, oh my God.
I would be in so much trouble. And
I just love how I always thought the factory was a place a nightclub you put on. No, it was just his studio. It was just where people went and hung out. That'd be a lot of trouble. But no, Todd Haynes knows the atmosphere to put something in to lift up the story. And I love how this is playing with truth, because you are dealing with people kind of being real people, but at the same time they're not, and so you can kind of get away with that murky in between. Like I love this, like there's the thing of when Kurt Wilde and Brian Slade meet, and he goes, oh well, I've lost my management, I don't have anything going on, Stooges are pretty much, my band is pretty much over. I think actually at the time Iggy was living in someone's garage, like he was actually Actually, no, wait, he was in rehab. Actually, no, one story, I've heard multiple stories. One story was he was actually in rehab. Bowie goes to see him because he wants to meet him, because he like, okay, I want to work with this guy. Comes in, first thing he does is offer him cocaine. And I'm just like, that is the most 1970s story I've ever heard. And this was Bowie's I'm eating nothing but peppers and milk and cocaine face. So whatever he's doing. But this is a lunch, and he sort of says, I'm trying to get off heroin. It's my main man. Will you be my new main man? I love that line so much. It's just like, I'm leaving one addiction for another. It's
great. There's a little, it's a humorous scene.
Yes.
Because they add the hearts in the eyes and then the dollar signs in the manager's eyes.
Yes.
It's great. And there's a scene that's like a press soiree, and it's all staged to look like the 1920s or something.
Really is, yeah.
It's all in gold. Everyone's in gold, and it's this beautiful set, and everyone is quoting Oscar Wilde. again. And then they're interviewing Brian Slade, and he's, they're asking him about his sexuality and the act, and he talks about masks, and he uses the famous Oscar Wilde quote, man is least himself
without
himself when he talks in his own person. Give him a mask and he'll tell you the truth.
Yes, which is my favorite Oscar Wilde quote, because
it's so good. And it's so perfect here because it's that idea of masks and identity and persona and what is real.
Yes.
And is it possible to be more truthful when you're wearing the mask? But how can anyone trust that it's true if they know that there's a mask there?
This is what I love about the Brian Slade character, because he is a construct, but he could be speaking his truth by saying, yes, I am bisexual. The actual David Bowie did pull, as Brian Slade pulled that statement back when he got into the 80s and his new persona. But was he able to be more truthful because he was wearing the mask of his mask and be able to go, I am this, I am a demon. This is actually me. And it's kind of fascinating because you don't know, and you're never going to know the answer. I read this movie as Kurt Wilde is the more authentic one, but at the same time, what's authentic? Like it's one of those movies. It's very postmodern in that way because everything's styled differently. You move from the 20s, and you go back to the 70s, then you're going back to the 19th century, especially that orgy scene, which is so decadent that it looks like it's from the 1880s. Yeah. And that moment where the wig falls off Toni Collette is just, finally, I can have my own hair. Like pieces fall away, but you're still keeping the masks on because she's still more of a British accent. And again, but the movie keeps going back to what is authentic. Is Arthur Stewart more authentic when he's more in the glam rock aesthetic with the makeup and everything, or is he more himself in 1984 when he's wearing a blue shirt? I mean, there's no answer to that. And I love how both directors just keep throwing questions at you, and all you can go is like, maybe not.
Yeah. Well, and I think, this question is eternally relevant.
Yeah.
About what is authentic, what is identity, who are you?
Yeah.
Because it's a question we're all asking all throughout our lives. And it's something that we keep as human beings trying to address what it means to be real, what it means to be authentic, what it means to be yourself.
Yes.
What it means to identify, and how does your identity then connect you to a community?
Exactly. As your community, because I love, with sexuality is important, but it's not always a thing that defines every single part of you. Right. It's a part of you, but it's not all of you. Your community is part of you, but yet it's not all of you. There are pieces, they're just kind of pieces to the actual whole person. And this is kind of what this movie is trying to address. And the fact that, yes, I said you could not have had the Christian Bale character. I don't think it's as good a movie because he's trying to, his memories of his different phases in his life, they all ultimately lead to the same thing, but they're different constructs of one thing. And it's ultimately, okay, who am I? And I think the pin goes to answer some of that, like, this is you. But again, it's still something he has to work on. I mean, no one's ever fully, I think, settled in their identity because identity can change really easily. It's not a set thing. And even being truthful to yourself is not a set thing. It's all about the context and where you are and what's going on and all that kind of thing. But it's this ethereal dream thing, which I think is what Velvet Underground captures. Not Velvet Underground, Velvet Goldmine captures perfectly. Like, it's the B-side to a more famous song. It is, but is that the real self, or is I think it was Starman that was on? I can't remember which one. It was definitely a Ziggy Stardust thing. But is that the real or is it the top? What is actually real? And this movie never goes to answer any of it. And which is why I'm going to go back and keep watching this movie, because there are things I've missed, and they're all little glances and all little ticks and all little kind of things, because it's a broad tapestry of a movie. It's so good.
Oh yeah, this film is so rewatchable.
Oh yeah.
And you have all these big ideas and the questions, and then there's also just the experience of watching this film, taking in all of the sights and the sounds and the music.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful film.
Oh, so beautiful. I mean, both Scarface and Velvet are both very Baroque movies. And Baroque is a really hard tone to pull off, because Baroque can go ugly quickly. It's like Caravaggio. Yeah. That's also good. Well, Caravaggio was a Baroque artist. But those are really hard to, people who go for it often make it too ugly that you just don't want to look at it. So doing Baroque correctly is really difficult. And yeah, you've got two examples of two amazing Baroque films here, and they work perfectly together, not just because of the cocaine, but the excess, the capitalism of everything. The cocaine is in there. Like, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of, which I kind of like. But there's an excess, there's a construct of what you have to make yourself, and it's all bluster. Yes. What happens when you don't have that base anymore? And I think the fact that one's I like to think Velvet's more London, but it's both American and London. That's the whole point of Brian Slade and Kurt Wilde. But Scarface is pure America. Like, you cannot get more American than Scarface. Oh, yeah. That is, most people go, no, it's not. Like, oh, yeah,
yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
And pointedly so.
And pointedly. I mean, he's literally pointing a finger and going, this is America. This is it. I'm not being coy about this. Where there's Velvet's being very coy about everything it's doing. But it's just, yeah.
Yeah, no, and that's a great point about, Velvet Goldmine, definitely there's the cultural exchange.
Yes. Oh, yes.
London representing Britain and New York representing America, and how they're influencing each other.
And Scarface is the exchange between America and Cuba. And it's not just the criminal element, it's also the people, the music, the food, and that is all touched on. Yes, I sort of made the say that Tony doesn't want to work in as a dishwasher because people like the Cuban food, but they don't like the Cubans, which is this very kind of otherness.
Yeah.
But it's still that exchange. The fact that I live in a city where I can have, it's got a nationality community, so I can go and eat all their food, as well as experience all this kind of melting pot of culture. And it is a true exchange. And I love it. I love food. That's probably the point I'm making. But no, you're right. Both movies are about this exchange of culture and vibrancy and class and everything like that. Because actually, it sort of paints it in the movie that you don't know where Brian Slade came from, but you're guessing he's very middle class, whereas Kurt Wilde is obviously, they make a point from saying he came from a trailer park in Detroit, which is where Iggy Pop came from. So they make that distinction of British middle class with American working class, and they're doing that exact same thing as well.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah. Thank you for so much for making me finally watch this Velvet Underground and actually watch Scarface for the first time, I think, since the late 90s. Like, it's been a while.
I'm so happy that you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
You got to experience it, that we got to talk about it.
This has been
come true.
It's always a pleasure to get to talk movies with you. I end up loving the movies so much more after talking, because your insights are the best. So it's
the feeling is mutual, my friend. Yeah. That's a two-way street.
Before we go, can you please tell people where they can find your good work and any podcast episodes you'll be appearing on?
So I was recently, I'm not sure when this will air. I recently was on Moving the Needle talking about unwatchable movies.
Oh, yes, I did see that one.
My most hated film. But I've got some other things coming up.
Yeah.
I'll be on Film Feast again here soon.
Excellent.
Cobwebs soon.
Oh, good.
So
yeah,
folks can find out more about that by following me on Twitter, also on Letterboxd, same handle for both, at Carmelita Says.
Please follow. It's always a great. She does these amazing double features, which are always fantastic. And yeah, so please follow Carmelita, and thank you so much for coming on. This has been an absolute blast. It'll probably be our second week of August, I'm thinking.
Nice.
Yeah, so not too far away. But yeah, again, I can't wait to have you back on for something else. So this is going to be
absolutely. I look forward to it. Anytime that you want to talk movies, I am there, my friend. It's always a pleasure and an honor. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, no, thank you so much for coming on. And thanks you so much for listening. We will be back next week for a double feature. All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.